Hello, you're listening to the Eric McKenna Project.
Dave, I appreciate you being here.
Honored to be here. Thank you for asking me, man.
Oh, man, this is going to be a good one. I initially, I think we connected on social media many years ago,
Yep.
but been watching your music and listening to your music and watching what you do, and I'm just glad that you were receptive to coming on, because I think we've got a lot of similar backgrounds and similar likes on the musical front as well, too.
I agree. What was the first question I asked you as to when you first asked me about doing it?
Old brain. Now, here we go. I don't know. I can't remember.
I said, are you sure?
Oh, yeah. I assumed that was a joke. That should have been a joke. That should have been a joke.
I guess you're going to find out.
I am going to find out. That's right. Let's get the obligatory stuff out of the way. Tell the folks a little bit about who you are, and talk a little bit about your band, and then we'll take it from there.
Well, yeah.
I feel like you're on a job interview.
Yeah.
As a freelancer.
Yeah. I'm a lead vocalist in the band North of Mason Dixon, or Nomad. I'm a nerd by day. Mm-hmm. Do IT work and things like that. And
he's one of those guys.
I'm the move guy. If you remember that from Saturday Night Live. Move. But yeah, Nomad's been alive and kicking for, we're in year 15 or 16 now. Amazing. It's kind of crazy.
Yeah.
Definitely some transitions along the way with members and things like that, but it's been a pretty crazy ride, pretty fun ride. We've had ups and downs, no doubt, but for the most part, it's definitely been, worthwhile. And I mean, we've produced a lot of, in my opinion, what I feel is a lot of good music along the way.
Played for a lot of people.
Yeah.
Made a lot of people happy. Right.
Yeah. We've been all over the place. I mean, we call what we do, our touring, regional, because we probably we at least played on a consistent basis in the 5-6 state area for a long time.
Yeah. I think you came on my radar well before this show. A couple of years ago, we have a mutual friend, Jeremy Danger. On Froggy.
Danger's our boy. Yep, I love him.
Yeah. And I don't know if you were. Did you folks went in studio a couple times with them?
Oh yeah, we do. I mean, we were for quite a while when we were releasing new material, and it's a tradition now. He calls it a tradition that we're on the 12 Bands of Christmas regardless every year.
That's it. I think that might have been where you came up on my radar initially.
Yeah.
I think so.
That's the funnest time. That's my favorite time to do stuff, because I'm a Christmas song addict, number one. Yeah.
Okay.
And he's definitely on board with doing whatever. So we come in and pick some strange things.
Right on. So let's get a little bit about your background before we get into the fun stuff.
You just want me to rattle off? Okay.
I want to know. I want to know, as I ask most musicians that come on this show, when did the spark start? At what age did it happen, and who delivered it to you, if anyone?
Yeah, definitely. It kind of came in phases, but the first just general wanting to sing, I don't know if I could say at the time it was going to be I wanted to sing in front of people and this and that, but strangely enough, I just said Christmas stuff. 4 years old, no joke, we had the 8-track of the Jackson 5 Christmas album. And the band in general was mind-blowing to begin with, but Michael at that age cranking out Christmas tunes, and me at 4 and 5 years old trying to emulate him, little white dude with a voice that couldn't touch his. But I mean, honestly, like that, I literally used to have my parents come in and tell me to be quiet, because I had headphones on, and I was just singing horribly at the top of my lungs, at the time not knowing I was trying to develop my voice. But I mean, that was literally the first thing, the Jackson 5, and I'm not kidding, I have posted on social media pictures of that 8-track that I still have.
Right on.
It's destroyed, but and that's where my first inspiration came from.
That was it.
Yep. And then it quickly, literally quickly took a left or right turn, whatever you want to say. Because I had 2 older brothers and an older sister, and they were all into mainly rock. I mean, at the time, Kansas, Kiss was, I mean, we're going to talk about Kiss, but Kiss
sure.
was the next huge, like, hit me like a brick wall a few years after that.
Right.
And I became obsessed at that point. But, you know, all that era of great rock, Styx, Queen, Kansas, late
70s, man.
Yeah, I mean, my brothers in particular were that, and my sister, probably not intentionally, but she was into a lot of the female rockers, Pat Benatar, Heart, all that stuff. So all that stuff was just bashing me, and I loved every second of it. You know, and then, you know, that, I mean, it was probably in the same era, but like Billy Joel, all that stuff was just being slammed on me all the time. So,
did you have any pop sensibilities too, or was that there, or were you really at that moment? Because I always ask that question of vocalists.
Yeah, no, I mean, it was definitely there. It, again, like, that was probably, strangely enough, we were talking a little earlier, but like, that was probably came into early 80s where I got away from rock and back into pop. But during that time,
a lot of people did.
Yeah, but during that time, like, you know, Hall & Oates and that kind of stuff stick in my head.
Right. The MTV era.
Well, even previous to that, I'm saying, like, there was a little pop infused pre-MTV,
Late
but
70s.
once we got into early 80s, yeah, I mean, I kind of got away from rock a lot.
Right.
And got more back into like Michael Jackson. I mean, we got to talk about Prince.
Of course.
Because Prince is my heart and soul.
Probably the greatest showman ever.
Yeah. That's my heart and soul. And you know...
well, we're there. Let's talk about him now, because I think we may have some similar stories. He came on my radar at the very beginning for the For You record, and it wasn't that it was like anything else I was listening to. I was a hard rock kid.
Yep.
You know, but there was just something magical about that artist in that time frame. He was the right guy at the right time.
Yeah. I missed the early boat, like the first few albums, and I would probably say, like...
Did you get the Controversy?
Yes.
Okay, so that's where it kind of started for me too.
Yeah, and that's when I first started hearing it, but like I didn't really grasp it at the time. I mean, like, you know, Red Corvette, 1999, those hits and stuff, but like for whatever reason, the song that always stood out that I got hooked on and then went insane after that was Delirious. I have no idea why.
Oh, really?
Yeah, like... anytime I reference back, that's the one that sticks out. I knew the previous tunes and I liked them.
Okay.
But like that one like grabbed me, and then, you know, Purple Rain came along. But like, to me, at the time, you know, Purple Rain was everything. You know, I wore it out 7,000 times, knew every little note, still know every little note. But it's what came after is what blew my mind. Sign of the Times.
Yeah.
And then into the early 90s, a couple albums, Gold, Diamonds and Pearls.
Yeah.
Those are the ones that I can't ever stop listening to and won't ever stop listening to.
Okay, so because the reason I asked that question is I have some friends who also are Prince fans from the same era, and we were, by Purple Rain, we were okay with him going forward, but I think we were kind of done by then. We had just gotten so much of it, and that album, for as amazing as it truly is, undeniable.
Right.
It also was hugely oversaturated.
No doubt.
So
and that's how I feel today about that album.
Got it.
Like, it's hard to listen to those songs. And I mean, I feel the same, you know, we could probably talk
absolutely.
Other albums too.
Absolutely.
Other songs that I can't ever listen to again. But that's the thing. Like, to me, he... You know, I think Around the World in a Day was right after that, and I forget. Love Sexy.
Isn't there a movie for that too, right? Like a noir movie or something?
Graffiti Bridge was one.
That was later.
Under a Cherry Moon.
That was right after Purple Rain.
Yeah.
That was filmed like in France or something. Had kind of a funky feel to it.
Yeah, and so those albums to me resembled Purple Rain in that sound, but Sign of the Times came along, and like it was a right hook to me. And that album to this day is a masterpiece, start to finish.
There's no doubt. There's no doubt. Did your vocal style, looking at it today, obviously you've probably watched it evolve or you've listened to it evolve.
Right.
It's coming from you. But was there any influence coming from Prince in the way you sang?
No doubt, yeah. I mean, like those days, probably, you know, I guess early high school into late high school is where I was extremely shy, like going into high school and stuff. So like singing in front of somebody was just not an option in my mind.
Right.
And then I got into choir and chorus and things like that. And at that time I was like using him and other voices that I loved to try to like kind of find mine and develop mine to some degree, because it was not really developed at any point in any way at that time. But yeah, I mean, starting, I mean, probably with Purple Rain, because again, it was just so there all the time, and I was trying to emulate things he did and the way he did it during that album is when I like, that was one of the first ones where I'm like, okay, what's he doing here, and can I do that, and how can I do that? And, I wasn't an early vocal lessons person. That came later on.
Okay.
So I was just experimenting at the time.
So were you the only one in your family that dug Prince the way you did, or did your siblings dig him as well?
My sister, I would say, was in the ballpark, but not me. And
that's a right turn from rock.
Yeah. But the thing is, honestly,
there.
He's everything.
Yes, he is.
If you listen to his body of work, it's
He's everything.
Yep. And again, the later years, like early 90s on, there's so much rock. I mean, there's verging on metal, a couple of metal tunes.
Right.
And, his playing is rock playing. Regardless
I don't
of what
know
song.
what his playing is, but it's superior to rock playing
and
to
it's
me.
Distinct. Yeah, and it's so distinctive. So, yeah. But yeah. So, my sister like bounced around a lot with music, so she kind of didn't get what he really was.
Okay.
She just liked the hits. You know what I mean?
Yeah. It sounds like we may be similar in that we just had a thirst for like really good stuff.
Yeah.
And that's where I think I deviated from a lot of people around me. They were just strictly metalheads or just strictly R&B, or I guess it was R&B then, strictly soul. Because you'd find me at a Prince concert or a Rick James concert. I'd be at the Gap Band show. The next night I'd be at a Kiss show, or I'd be an Aerosmith show. I was everything, right?
I'm the same. Yeah, and I mean, my thing is, and I'm sure some of the music. In fact, I know some of the music that I like and will always love. People can't stand and think it's horrible, but I just
doesn't matter.
No, it doesn't. And I just think there's a core something about music where it's either good or bad.
Right.
That's
exactly.
it.
Right.
You know what I mean?
You say that to people and they don't get it. Like I've said exactly the same thing, where music is either good or bad. Even with symphonic music, like why will some symphonic music, if you're exposed to it, like something will hook you, almost like a right hook to the face sometimes. It's so good.
Yeah.
The rest of it's just background noise,
Yeah.
right? But there's once in a while, even if it's a genre you wouldn't really dive into, something will grab you.
No doubt.
If you let it.
I agree. And I mean, like, 90s rock, for, as an example for me, when it took over, and I'll use the word grunge, but it was a lot of different things.
Right.
When it kind of took over, I despised it, beyond despised it, because it crushed so many of the artists.
My kindred spirit here.
Yeah, because it crushed so many of the artists that I love. And I mean, it became...
It killed hair metal.
It did. And I mean, the thing is, it killed it in a way where, number one, I realized after the fact, the bands themselves, maybe, and somebody's going to kill me for this, but maybe with the exception of Nirvana, none of them intended for that to happen.
Right.
The 90s bands.
Right.
But it was an agenda put in place by MTV and radio stations.
It was radio station. I think it was the record industry by labeling,
no doubt,
creating a marketable product.
Yep, they're like, we're done with them, we're moving on. But it's like that to me, that was the first time I saw that happen in my lifetime, where music wasn't available to everybody all the time, and that crushed me. I mean, depressed me for a long time. But again, in retrospect, going back to it now, like, I own a Pearl Jam album or two.
Sure.
What's his name? Chris Cornell, I adore as a vocalist, and things like that. But at the time,
in the end, weren't they just fucking rockers, man?
Exactly.
It was just a rock band.
Just repurposed in a different
Stone
way.
Temple Pilots, how they labeled them as grunge. That was the most dynamic group to come out of the 90s that's still somewhat viable now.
Agreed.
Right?
Agreed.
Look at their body of work. That's not grunge.
Agreed.
That's crazy.
But it similar to the hair metal thing or the hard rock thing, they got lumped in. You know what I mean? Everybody gets lumped into something.
Labeled. Pigeoned in a box.
Whether you want to be or not.
Yeah.
And then it can either catapult you or screw you.
When did you realize that we were no longer in Kansas anymore, that there had been a tidal shift? Was it, because for me it was going into National Record Mart. That was my... I went in 89 or maybe it was 90, I guess. And we talked about Rush off air. Rush never fit into any genre. So you just, when a Rush album came out or CD, you went and got it. That was just the way things worked in my life.
Yeah.
So I was in there buying a Rush thing, and then I couldn't find like the hair metal stuff, it wasn't called hair metal, but I couldn't find.
Yeah, I call it melodic hard rock.
Melodic hard rock, right? And then you started seeing the title shift where things got like, it appeared the music was angry to me.
Yep, I agree. That's the word I would use. I mean, just a lot of darkness and depression and anger and angst, and I'm like, where did this come from? I'm like, I'm still a happy dude to some degree, and I don't want to listen to this, but we could compare.
Somebody did.
Yeah, we can compare this to a lot of things, but yeah, that there was a crowd out there dying for somebody to feel what they were feeling, and that
kids younger than us at the time. I think that's it too, and you got to give kudos to some degree to the capitalist nature of the record industry, because they are on point. Usually.
They're not anymore.
Oh no,
but they were.
Well, that's because I think they had a viable marketing strategy, that a process they followed. Well, the internet changed all that. But
yeah, I say they could sell CDs back then and records.
Yeah, there was a tangible product. Once it became a downloading medium, now anything goes, and they have never put their arms around it from that point.
Right.
But that up to that point, they were on the cusp of what the next thing was. Now they were helping creating the next thing, wouldn't you say?
Oh yeah.
I mean, but I thought grunge was and I pushed back too. I remember hearing Pearl Jam, and knowing that that's rock and roll, not grunge or any. That's just rock and roll to me. But man, they would label them in with Soundgarden, which was just a heavy rock and roll band.
Right.
But that was grunge, right?
Right, but at the time, like I said, in my mind, it was grunge, and I hated it because it destroyed.
You labeled it.
Yeah, I did.
I labeled it too.
Yeah, I did. And looking back, I'm like, okay, I was wrong there, and it wasn't this, and it wasn't that. But but to answer your question about when it hit me, like I can't say there was anything like a record store experience that stood out, but It's me stealing a story off of Janie Lane from Warrant, and his thing was, and it was around 92, 93, like things were starting to go off the cliff, and his example was, he walked into his record company, Columbia Records, and for years, the big framed picture above the desk when you walked in was Cherry Pie. Which he'll tell you he hated the song. I mean, he would have told you he hated the song and stuff. Right. But he walked in one day, and it was, oh my goodness, you already said their name, and I'm just trying.
Soundgarden.
No.
Pearl Jam or Nirvana. Stone Temple Pilots.
No, I wish it was any of those. Who sang? Oh my goodness.
That's all right. There wasn't that.
Man in the Box.
Oh, Alice in Chains.
It was an Alice in Chains thing, and he went, okay. Things are changing.
Yeah, times have changed.
And like that Alice in Chains, I mean, something we'll talk about at some point here is my buddy Ray Luzier is the drummer for Korn.
Oh, yeah.
He replaced their original drummer a long time ago at this point.
Yeah, right on.
And they toured, Korn in 2019 toured with Alice in Chains, who has a new vocalist, young black dude, incredible.
Oh, yeah.
But they're a band that I, to this moment, can't get past.
Because of that indelible mark that you had.
not because of that. Their sound, and to me, it was always anger and negative in that. And I could be wrong because I don't know their catalog that well.
Yeah, no, I think there's a lot to that. Just to rewind the background here, I tried to get my sidekick, Fred Koala, who's been on many shows, if you've watched the show or listened. Freddie goes back to the Boogie Street years, and Fred and I connected because of music. He was and has been a longtime guitar tech for everybody, Zach Wilde and all. But he worked for Alice in Chains from, I don't know, maybe it was like 2010 to 2014. So we talk all the time. It's not. I don't think their music is as angry as it used to be. I agree. The funny thing is, David, I'll put that on and I'll actually rediscover that. Like, that is a freaking really good song.
And I might.
Staley's voice is really pretty good if you give it a shot.
Strong as all. Yeah, strong as all strong. I agree. And if I did that, I'd probably think the same thing. But I just never did.
Yeah. We're going to get to it. And the reason I wanted Fred also here was that he was also working on many movies in Pittsburgh, but he was also on the road.
That's hilarious.
So we'll get there. Yeah, and we'll get you and him together in the same room at some point.
Okay,
here. It's going to be really fun.
Cool.
But in regards to Alice in Chains and just listening to your rationale, it is exactly what I believed the moment I heard Man in the Box. I'm like, this is like, It's smacking. I not that I was offended, but it was like, wow, they took the religious angle.
Yeah, that offended
in
me.
their face, in your face. But what was undeniable was the not the anger, but it was the you separate the lyrics from the music of that song. Like, wow, these guys they can. And I found out it was Cantrell. They were writing really hooky but heavy tunes.
And not, and to me, I mean, yes, they were melodic, but not in a, you know,
it wasn't your style.
Right. That's, I mean, and that's the bottom line for me. That's what it was. Yeah. And it just wasn't that melody that to me is the most important thing, and the thing that catches and gives you, you know, if it's a positive melody, you know, just lifts you and
so that
kind of thing.
Yeah. So I'm actually speaking to someone that can identify how I felt in 1990. This is exactly.
See, you were early on though, because to me. It was still. I mean, if you go back and I'm an addict about that stuff, and I'm hooked on, still hooked on all those bands and things. But you know, they were still producing hits. They were on the charts probably up until like 92-ish or so, and then it started going. So you got in early on that. I mean, I was probably clueless to Nirvana and all that stuff until it really kicked in. Yeah, because I was focused on everything that I still loved and wasn't paying attention to any of that.
When I heard I'm trying to think where I was, but when I heard the first Nirvana first song that was "Smells Like Teen Spirit," the first time I heard that, I got nothing out of it. Yeah. Then I heard another album off that, I got nothing out of it. Then I saw them. I don't know at what award show or what MTV thing or background, you know. Nothing. Yeah. I'm like, they don't even tune their instruments live. It was horrendous because the whole point of it was really kind of punk all over again, which I wasn't against, but it wasn't punk to me. That wasn't It wasn't the Pistols, man. That was like something. This was something funky.
I'm 100% with you.
You know.
Yep. And I mean, again, like to me, they might have been the only one, and I have to put a caveat to all this too, is because I adore Dave Grohl. Yeah. I have no idea how Grohl came out of that, but I'm glad he came out of that. You know,
it's a different Grohl though.
Yeah, 100%. He was in it. He was kind of more. He seemed like. I mean, he even said he was like the 10th or 12th drummer into that whole thing, and I think he started as a hired gun, and he was never allowed to really contribute his music, his thoughts anyway.
Right.
But I really think, and I could be way wrong on this, that they were one of the few bands that either agreed with the new agenda or wanted to push the new agenda as much as possible. I think they kind of, you know, I don't mean to sound like, you know, the crybaby, but like they made a point to lash out and do little things to make you look back and go, oh, that stuff sucked previous. And we're making fun of it now. We're mocking it now. Just little hints here and there.
Yeah, but I mean, that is the spirit of punk, I have to tell you.
I agree.
And the funny part about it is I think it has to do. Now, I'm 4 years older than you, so there is that. 4 years is a big time in terms of childhood. So
it is.
The reason I bring this up is because what validated the Sex Pistols to me in that whole era, not just them, was they were like throwing the big middle finger to everything before it. Now, I didn't like it because their whole stick was to tear down Pink Floyd and tear down ELO and tear down.
So they were doing the same thing.
But they were coming from Britain, and they were tearing down the British progressive rock, heavy rock. Here, and at that time, I thought that was just the way thing. You're not at the age of 10, 12 years old. You don't know any better. That's just that's the way it is. But now, at 22, 23, I can look at it objectively and say, no, what you're saying is shit is fantastic.
Yeah.
F you, because this, you know, so that's where my whole anti-grunge thing was. I was taking offense. I shouldn't have, but I was taking offense of they're tearing down my music.
Yeah. But you know, the more you say that, again, I think you're right. Like, I was too young to even see or experience or understand the Sex Pistols thing and all that. But it happened back then. But to me, this was the beginning. The early 90s was the beginning of there's not enough room for everybody. And that pissed me off.
That's I'm like, very true.
And it has held
that
true.
That was verbiage.
It has held through to today in every genre. It's you know, at some point or another, more recently, I mean, this is kind of another topic, but, well, not really, but it's like youth eventually takes over in a genre, it becomes crap to some degree, and then it recycles itself, and like it goes through it in every genre.
No question.
And you know,
No question.
my band is in the modern. We've called it for years the modern country genre, and when we decided to transition out of like pop rock into the country scene, that was in like 03, 04. I, at the time, you would have to put a gun to my head to tell me I'm ever going to sing in a country band or I'm going to enjoy country. And my drummer, Bob Kunkel, who you may know through other people, hands me a disc and says, give this a chance, give this a listen. It was Keith Urban.
Oh, yeah.
And I was just totally taken. I'm like, well, first of all, he's a rocker disguised as a country guy.
Right.
And these songs are pop and rock tunes. They're not country tunes.
Absolutely.
And that era, that time frame, you know, it was probably a little before that, probably like maybe beginning of 2000s, up through maybe 2015 or earlier. Again, it was that window for me in country music where everybody was still welcome. Every age, you know, George Strait, everybody was still welcome. And it hit some thing where even those, I mean, Keith Urban he's going to be around for a long time.
Right.
But a lot of those groups and solo artists from that era have been phased out for the youth. And the youth of country is pop music, fake drums, no bass on tours.
When do you think that actually started to become prevalent? In country music.
Well, some of my band members will, if they end up seeing us, they'll laugh and they'll agree with me to some degree. And I hate to pick somebody out, but the one that stands out to me, and I think it was a little before this, but Florida Georgia Line. And you know, everything I see and hear, again, I have a chance now to look back a little bit, says to me that they're good people and they do a lot of good things. But their brand of music, you know, programmed drum beats, you know, and I like to some degree a bit of rap and things over the years, but they incorporated that in, and you know, it's called hick hop and all this stuff. I mean, like, I think of people like Johnny Cash and them rolling over in their graves going, what happened to country music? Because it just lost its depth and its storytelling ability and its instrumentation. To me, country, when I first heard it, I got addicted to like all the instrumentation about it. You know, like fiddle, steel guitar.
That's real country, though. So you have an appreciation for real country.
Well, yeah, but
more traditional country.
No, I mean, I appreciate it a lot more now. But again, like Keith Urban, Rascal Flatts, Big and Rich.
That's guitar driven.
Yeah, like Big and Rich were ones that when they first came on the scene, like I heard crunch guitar and I heard electric solos that were ripping, and I'm like, this to me, mixed in with all they had banjos going on in the background, a fiddle solo, everything combined. It was like my mind was blown. And you know, they came out and said like they had a hard time getting people to listen to them, labels and such, because they'd go to them and go, look, number one, we're not changing what we're doing, and you're going to hear some heavy electric guitar in our tunes and this and that. Can you deal with that? And I forget what label they originally signed to, but you know, Save a Horse, Ride a Cowboy, man, right out of the box, punched you in the face with that kind of sound. And to me, that, you know, that really sucked me in along with the other stuff. Yeah. So I do, I mean, there's no doubt I appreciate the traditional stuff. I grew up on that through my dad to some degree, and I loved it. But like probably like Garth Brooks in the early 90s, when I first heard him, I'm like, okay,
that's Country Kiss.
Yeah,
his shows are Country Kiss.
Exactly,
right?
And you know how big of a Kiss fan he is.
Yeah. But I mean, his shows that changed everything to me.
No doubt. Yeah, and same to me. And that's when I first gave it a look and said, okay, they got something going there. And it got a little cheesy into the 90s, but I mean,
oversaturation. I think, didn't help.
But like bands throughout that time, Little Texas and things like that, they were a little cheesy, but I dug them because they were like a hair band that played country music.
Yeah, and I see. I've really come full circle, David. I don't have a bias anymore to like if something sells, it's valid. It doesn't mean I have to like it.
That's true.
I just think
there's a crowd out there that likes it.
And I think the mistake happens when old fogies like myself want to stay very rigid to labels that were given to me. I didn't create these labels.
Right.
I fucking bought into them by going to record stores where this is heavy metal, this is hard rock, this is R&B, this is rap. Consumers just buy in, and we go to the trough because they drag us, they put us there. We go there willingly, and we compartmentalize our thinking that way. Now, since downloading, I think the generations below us really hate labels, God bless them, and they just want to listen to music that they like. And granted, I'm not a big EDM fan. There's some things I like, but I like to create. I like more human creativity in my music.
Agreed. Yep.
That's how the differentiation between that and what I dig. But I can't invalidate it if someone's paying for it. That's like the ultimate test that it must be worth something.
Right, but you have to counter that today with who's paying for it.
True.
Because number one, let's go with streaming. Some people were paying for that, but I'm an IT nerd. If I wanted to steal music, all the music I love, I'd have it all.
Of course.
I still buy CDs, but I am also subscribed to a streaming service.
Right.
I'll preview music on a streaming service, buy the CD, blah, blah, blah. But I agree with you there for sure. The one thing that I think is a killer about today's not music, but the music in general, is the availability of it is so huge that young people more than anybody are overwhelmed with.
It's not special anymore.
Correct. It's just there everywhere. It's devalued. You can listen to any genre at any time. So somebody likes one song from one artist, they're not getting that album. Look, like I used to order CDs from Japan for bonus tracks from Bon Jovi's the one that sticks out to me, and because I wanted more music, I wanted new songs that nobody else ever heard, all that stuff, and that just doesn't exist anymore. And I mean, I'm sure it does for some folks, but in general, they have it in front of them. And I find I've friends of mine, same age, we have conversations that I might get on a wormhole on Amazon Music Unlimited. I'm looking at one artist and it goes, you might like these, and I'll jump to it. And I'm like, I'm doing the same thing. I'm not giving somebody a full chance because I'm already somebody onto the next
There's
artist.
too many choices. Or that's a horrible thing to say in a wonderfully capitalistic society, but we may not be mentally wired in a way as a human to take so much in at one time.
That is a great point. Yep. I think you're right. It's overwhelming to the mind.
It's too much.
And again, that devalues it though too, because anybody or their mother can become a YouTube what's the word? YouTube
influencer,
celebrity or something.
Celebrity, okay.
And stuff. Anybody can do that now, and it's in a way that's beautiful, but in a way that's crap.
Well, that's exactly right. In a way, the door to entry is wider, lets a lot of more people in. I'm for that. The problem is when you do that, even if you take the money component out of it, when you do that, quality suffers because quality comes from the parsing of things,
exactly,
right?
Yep.
And when you don't have that parsing and everything's available,
and think of
you have to wade through the garbage.
Right, and think of what you're missing. That's like opening a dam and trying to catch the fish you want that are coming through. You know what I mean? And think of all the stuff you're missing. And those are the, you and I could probably have talk for hours about bands that should have made it, artists that should have made it, blah, blah, blah. And, it was different at that time. But today, to me, it's even worse. It's just like you're a tadpole in an ocean.
Yeah. Well, first off, before we even head there, let me ask you one question I've asked many artists on this show, especially in the music business. Today, is music disposable?
I mean, to me, it's an instant yes. And it goes back to it's devalued to nothing. And I mean, most, I talk to younger people enough and have, nieces and nephews and stuff where they jump on YouTube. They'll just go watch something on YouTube, or they'll, here's a good story. I think it is anyway. As I said, my buddy Ray Luzier, who's the drummer in Korn, him and I have these talks all the time about how devalued everything is and blah, blah, blah. He'll have fans come up to him. He's told me this a couple times with burned CDs. And he's like, dude, I love your drumming on this CD. Can you autograph it for me? And he goes, no. And he goes, do you know why I'm telling you that? And they'll look at him like stunned. He'll go, where'd you get that CD? Oh, my buddy burned it for me. Well, your buddy shouldn't have burned it for you, number one. Number two, you should have went and bought it. If you love my drumming that much, and like he'll come face to face with fans and give them that. And he's like, this is how we make our living. We tour, yeah, but it used to be a time where this was part of our living and stuff.
Can kids grasp that, though? Can they grasp it?
Not now, because depending on when you were born and when things happened, I just think they just missed that boat, and it sucks. It's depressing, and that's the thing. Like, we still sell CDs at our shows. I mean, you can buy them online and stuff too, but it's more of a download or streaming thing. But we'll sell stuff at our shows, and somebody will go, "Oh, I'll burn this for my buddy," and I want to grab him by the throat and go, "Yeah, well, that's not the idea here." But so,
in some regards, you would listen to a rocker or a rock band from the 70s talk about how hard it was to break in, how lucky they were, and all this stuff. But then the next question would be, yeah, but was it not easier to get paid on your craft at that point than it is today?
Right.
They'd have to admit it.
They would have to, I would think.
Absolutely. No, I mean, you could buy a cassette player to make blank cassettes, but the technology was just emerging.
Right.
No one's really. I mean,
Right.
if somebody wanted that record, they'd have to go get it.
Right. Yep. Yep. I mean, I would think, there are some artists that I would think that aren't creating new music, that live off their tours, that they might in today's world disagree because they don't have the pressure of creating new music.
Right.
They just live off the old, like Steve Miller Band or somebody like that.
Right.
They just suck in money on their tours.
Most of the dinosaur rock bands are that way,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, and that's the thing though. Like, I know we're jumping all over the place.
That's all right. That's what we do here.
But again, some of the bands I love from my era, I'm trying to think, White Snake, things like that.
Absolutely.
Those bands,
Bon Jovi.
yeah, all these guys, and not all of them, a lot of these bands are still creating new music and releasing new albums. Whether the majority of the world wants to hear them or not, they're still doing it, and I give them huge credit for that. And there's so many gems among that music that
Sure.
nobody's ever heard.
Sure.
And that's another thing that just crushes me. I'm like, because I'm loyal to the people that I love. Period.
Well, of course.
I mean, in
Of course.
life,
It's called
in
being
music,
a fan, man.
yeah. And if you're still giving it a shot, you're still touring, you're still producing new music, I'm with you.
Right.
I hear you may have seen, like you said, we met on social media. You may see that I just out of the blue I discovered this little feature in Facebook where you can save a collection.
Oh yeah.
Which I never screwed with before.
Yep.
And I started doing this with music videos that I couldn't find anywhere else. And I said, I'm going to put them in this save place so I can reference them back and potentially
Absolutely.
download them. So I made it private at first.
Okay.
And I started saving some here and there. And depending on the settings of the video, if it was public, it would then make my collection public, and I didn't know why. And people would start liking things and commenting. I'm like,
Got it.
Why are they doing this? And I looked, I'm like, why is this public? So at some point or another, I'm like, you know what? I'm leaving it public because I was getting positive reaction from it.
Right.
And I just lost track of where I was going.
That's all right.
But the point of it was it made me see to some degree that, like, there are still, I know what I was going to say. There are still people out there that love the music, but what I do on purpose now is I'll post like 3 videos from a band from maybe 3 different albums, and maybe only 1 or 2 of those albums were like big,
Right.
and somebody will come and go, I didn't know this song existed. I never saw this video, and that, like, I'm like, well, now you did. Go check out their newer releases because they're really good.
Yeah, and I think though is that more symptomatic of just the nature of having a legacy band? Like Jagger used to say all the time, during the middle of a show, well, we got to play a couple new songs, and the crowd would actually get quiet, or they'd be, not that material was bad. It's all subjective. Some of it I thought was very good, but it's just, and what does that say about us as humans, that we want to hear the specific songs from a specific part of our life that make us feel a certain way?
No doubt. Nostalgia.
But their current music won't touch us the same way.
Right.
I think that's just a human experience thing.
I
right?
do too, and I mean,
it's sad for the artist.
It is, because you're at a different point in your life and things like that. But I mean, there are, I agree that it's not the same feeling and things like that. But I guess both of us probably come at it from a little bit of a different angle than the average consumer. You know what I mean? Because we're involved in music. But like, here's a band that, somebody will hear me say this and they'll snicker. But Winger, okay, one of my favorite bands.
Oh yeah, I've seen them.
Talented beyond all talented, every member of the band in every way, and they continue to release new stuff.
Yep.
Their last couple albums, musically, I mean, you listen to where they've all matured.
Sure, they've gotten better.
Yeah, exactly.
It's the human experience.
Exactly.
You get better if you're doing it right.
Right, and all other people remember the Beavis and Butthead thing, period. But like, I listen to these songs musically, like how they're built and stuff, and I'm like, holy crap, this is such a good song, and I love it. And we got to play a show with Reb like a couple Christmases ago for a corporate party, and he come up and jammed with us, and him and I are BS, and I'm like, dude, like there's a tune called So Long China, and he goes, for you to tell me that song just makes me feel so good. And I'm like, well, good, because it's incredible. That album is incredible, etc. And I have a little bit of a problem with nostalgia, because yes, I do. I'll hear a tune and it'll take me back to something that made me feel the best ever in my life.
Yeah, that's music.
Yeah, exactly. That's one of the whole points of it. But I don't want to just be there. You know what I mean? Like,
right on.
A college roommate and I were discussing doing a podcast in some way.
Do it. My advice to you is do it.
Focused on melodic rock, metal primarily, but the more we keep talking about it, we're like, but we love, Richard Marx, Mariah Carey. We're throwing out all this different stuff. So we were trying to come up with a name, and I told him, I'm like, well, I'm going to be on this talk show with Eric today, and we talked a couple weeks ago, and I'm like, I should have a name for that point, but we still don't. But the point is that we just want to talk about good music, like we started talking about the very beginning of this.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so and the point of me saying that was that him and I both agree. We're like, if we're going to focus on, hair metal, pop metal, melodic hard rock, all that stuff, it's not going to only be nostalgia. If it is, I don't want to do it. I want to talk about their new music, what they've done since you last heard of them.
Their whole career.
Correct. And things like that. And, whether it helps anything, I'm still going to feel good about doing it.
Yeah.
And a lot of those groups, Reb's a good example, is you can reach out to them now directly,
right,
and they'll talk to anybody because they want to try to keep their music going too.
Absolutely.
So we already have like guests lined up.
That's awesome.
That we're excited about.
That's awesome, man. And that's the great thing about the internet too, is it's made the world smaller.
Yep.
And it's made opportunities for communication with people. And we're roughly the same era. And I tried to explain this to my son. I said, kid, look, I think my son was always fascinated why there were certain bands I just loved so much, and they were just part of who I was, and he would be exposed to them just hanging around his dad. And I just explained to him, I said, look, this music is disposable to you. I believe that. It's just something, it's a part of your life, but not really a significant part of your life, okay?
Yep.
When we would immerse ourselves in a band, it was because the only outlet to find out about them was this album, this big disc with writing on it. And you would hope, and we're exactly right. And you would hope that you may hear them on the radio, or you could talk to your friends about it, but there was no other way to get any information on this unique thing.
Yep.
It became like part of your identity because you loved it because the information was scarce.
Yep.
And you can't explain that feeling to a younger person.
Right. And that information
it's impossible.
and that information was very static. It was there. It was always there. You had it forever. It was yours.
It was yours.
Where today it's
you, and you own the album. You take it and you own that album.
Yep.
As a kid, and I know I don't. My experience was not unique. My experience is an example of what millions went through.
Right.
But that album collection was more important to me than anything I owned at that time, more than anything.
Me too.
I would rather carry my albums to school than my books.
Me too.
Even if I was never going to play that album at any study hall or anything. I just wanted to be holding those things. That was my badge of identity.
Yeah, I agree.
You know?
And I mean, you and I think Kiss, like I said, was the next phase in my lifetime, and that, for
let's go there. So what was the first album that you owned, or how were you exposed to that band?
I was exposed through my brother. I'm going to jump back and forth a little bit,
Sure.
but my very first concert was at age 9 at the Civic Arena, and it was the Kiss Dynasty Tour. And, couldn't be a better first concert, you know what I mean? Maybe it could have been the Destroyer or whatever, but at that point, the Dynasty Tour was pretty impressive.
No question. No question.
But, my oldest brother was the Kiss guy, and, Alive sticks out as one of the first things I heard, which is great, because I heard him live first.
Live 1?
Yeah, Live 1 first.
A masterpiece.
Yeah, and then from there it was kind of all over the place. But Destroyer, Rock and Roll Over, those ones are embedded in me forever. And again, I had to go back to the early ones.
Of course, that's the beauty of it, man. That's the beauty of it.
And then double platinum, obviously a rehash of a lot of stuff.
Didn't matter.
Yeah,
you had to have it.
Yeah, but it was
Strutter
still
78 on there, right?
Look at you, that's great. Yeah. So, but that to me, for a chunk of years, probably a solid 5-6 years, I lived, breathed Kiss. Not much else. I liked other music and pop stuff, but I had a Kiss in my bedroom that I shared with my brother. We kind of cycled through bedrooms growing up, but there was a kind of a walk-in closet. It's not today's walk-in closet, but it was I made it the Kiss cabinet, and it had, wall-to-wall everything: dolls, lunch boxes, posters, everything you can think of.
Yeah.
So, and my friends, that we were all obsessed with it. So, we were air Kiss band all the time. So
you fell in love with that band at a really odd time for them, because that was their first their Dynasty had good rockin' tunes on it. It was just a musical change for them.
Right. That's not when I fell in love with them. That was just my first concert.
Oh,
I fell in love with them around Alive.
Oh, okay, all the way back.
I was 6 years old.
Yeah, right on. There you go.
Something like that.
There you go. Okay.
So yeah.
But your first show
was Kiss.
Was that your first rock and roll show? Period.
That was my first concert ever. Kiss.
In '79.
I was 9 years old.
Right on.
I can, to this moment, picture where I was sitting, the view of the stage, them coming out of their colored risers. All that stuff. But yeah, that to me, at around that time, like you asked when I knew something or felt something. My brother was in a band, the same brother that took me to that concert at the time, and I would go watch him play.
Right.
And then I saw Kiss, and to me, I think that was the end. I was like, I want to be a rock star.
And then Unmasked came out.
Yeah, and I just
what happened?
I lost interest. Yeah,
there.
Yeah, I think I heard it and I saw it, and I was kind of fascinated with the album itself and the cartoon, the comic and stuff. But the music did not grab me the same way in any way that any of the past music had.
So by the time The Elder came out, were you just not even paying attention?
Nope, I was heavy into pop at that point. I had gone full force into
you had a million other kids in the exact demographic.
Yeah, and I was heavily into Michael Jackson, Billy Joel, Prince. Yeah, it was kind of coming at that point. I was listening to it, but not obsessed. But yeah, so
okay, so go back to that. It was you were being exposed to what pop music was offering, obviously MTV, and obviously with Unmasked and falling, and their musical direction falling off a cliff.
Yeah, I think pre-show too, we were talking a little about the Animalize, that era and stuff. And, I heard it and I liked it, but I never went out and bought it. Number one,
so it really didn't reinvigorate you into the Unmasked version of the Unmasked and non-makeup version.
But here's the thing.
Okay.
There's a lot to that. But I liked the fact that they took their makeup off. I really did.
Okay.
I just wasn't the songs didn't grab me like they did.
The Lick It Up album didn't do anything for you?
No, it does more. It did more so after the fact.
Okay.
But I know we were talking about the production of Hot in the Shade, but Hot in the Shade is where they were grabbing me again, and Revenge.
It's very melodic.
Yeah, Forever is to me a beautiful, beautiful ballad.
Yeah.
Revenge though really sucked me in.
You liked it. Okay.
I liked it a lot. It had a little bit more edge to it again.
Yeah.
It reminded me of older Kiss, old Kiss, some of it.
It did. Ezrin produced it, the original producer from Destroyer.
And I dug most of I think I could say I dug most or dig most of the tunes on it. So yeah, I kind of, But again, those struck. They had a revival when like the pop metal and the hard rock thing came back. You know, like Bon
96.
Jovi and all that stuff.
Yeah, that's a 20-year thing, I think. To
I
some
agree.
degree, or a 15 to 20 years kind of cycle.
Yeah, you see a lot. I mean, I do see a lot of kids on YouTube and stuff now, like learning drum stuff and learning guitar stuff from that era. And I'm like, yes, that's
Well, I think they almost have to. If you're young and you fall in love with an instrument, no one current, for the most part, is going to give you any inspiration.
Yeah, a few.
Right? I mean, not
My
many.
boy Ray, but not few.
Yeah,
Yeah.
no, right. No, but I'm saying of the right. No, well, but Ray's an old soul, though.
He is.
I'm saying, like, I'm talking about the younger players
Agree.
aren't
Agree.
going to give anything. Did you remember the album Kiss did called Carnival of Souls?
Yes.
Which was their
reunion tour with original guys. Am I right?
well, the original, that would have been 96, but they did a grunge album that was kind of not released because they did do the reunion tour, and then it got released. The fans got a hold of it, as fans do,
Yeah.
and started downloading it or sharing it. So they went ahead and released it, but it was written, I want to say the album was written right after Revenge, in 93, 94-ish, when they were really in a state of flux, deciding what they were going to do. And the album is extremely heavy. It's like, it's not a lost Kiss record. It's an official release.
Oh,
but
yeah.
There are some really very non-Kiss-like songs on there that there's nothing about that record.
Yeah.
And I got friends who love that record. I just don't get it.
There's a tune or two that were their singles, and I can't think of what they're called.
There was Rain, Jungle. There was really some.
So you're not. Wait, is this still Carnival of Souls?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. But Revenge,
Maybe
I thought
I'm-
was great. I didn't think Revenge was grunge. Revenge was just a good heavy rock album.
No, even though it would probably fall into it, like, for whatever reason, it's probably because Gene sings it, but like Unholy. That wouldn't be a song I would typically like, but for some reason I like it.
Yeah,
You know what I mean?
I get it completely.
And like, I just wanna. There's a good ballad on there. Every time I look at you.
There's Heart of Chrome, or is that from Hot in the Shade?
I think it's from Hot in the Shade. But yeah, I mean, but
Look in the Mirror, something about in the mirror or something.
I don't know.
Been a long time.
Yeah.
It's amazing how that's like an album way later in the band's career, but that is still a long time ago. We're old, pal.
Yeah, I mean, I just said this to somebody yesterday somewhere. We were talking about music in general, and you know, it's depressing to some degree that classic rock is now my music, whereas classic rock in my mind was a set thing. It was, you thought of DVE, you think of Pink Floyd and this and that, and now it's all bunched together. Like
The 90s is classic rock. The
Yeah.
early 2000s is quote
It
unquote
is.
classic. We're dinosaur rock.
we are. But you know, I'm okay with that. You know,
So, let me ask you about the Rush thing. Were you a Rush fan growing up?
see, I would say moderately. You know?
That was going to be my guess. You being a vocalist in melodic
At
rock, that
best.
was not Rush's
Geddy
gig.
Lee, I mean, I love the guy, but the thing is, the reason Geddy Lee is who they were, I mean, it's because of his distinctive voice and how insane they were, all musicians. So, yeah, no, I mean, I knew the tunes, and I learned older ones as I went along, but I knew the hits more than anything.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
And they probably would even all cringe at the word hits.
Exactly. I'm sure they would.
But
I'm sure they would.
But yeah, so I would say moderate to less than moderate, and then in later years going, wow, they were insane. But it was, at the time, it was like probably too progressive for me. It was too mental for me. Even though it's the melodies and everything were all there, but it's just like,
dig for them sometimes, but they're there.
yeah. But like lyrically and stuff, it didn't grab me. Now I listen and I look back and I'm like, holy crap, are they insane? You know, in every possible way.
I know. And Losing Peart was, I think we're coming at it from slightly different bents. I mean, you being a vocalist and really loving the song structure and all that. So me being a kid that was not really a musician at that time, and I played, well, I guess theoretically I played drums in the band in school. So the drumming thing was where I was looking at it from.
Right.
But just that was that one band that was so weird and so unique in 76 that like nobody knew what they were.
Right.
No one really cared who they were.
Right.
But that was intrinsically mine.
Yep. And I mean, I think the comparison there at that time was Queen too.
Yeah.
All over the place. They could do anything they
Early
wanted.
Queen,
And they
people
loved it. And that's that those two stick out to
Good
me as do
point.
whatever the hell you want, and they did.
It kind of works.
It does. Yep.
It kind of works too. So, did you miss the whole album thing? Because I was right in there at the age I was at. Like, albums were everything, man. Just carrying records around.
No, I mean, I
didn't want to go to CDs. I didn't want to go to CDs.
Right. I was with my older siblings and stuff. I was in the mix of 8 tracks and albums, and then cassettes quickly came along.
Yeah.
So yeah, but I mean, I have some older albums. I'm now at 50 plus years old.
I heard him say 37, but I'm who's counting. Right?
I'm acquiring albums, just either redos or old ones that meant something to me along the way, that marked something to me along the way.
That's a good thing to do.
You know what I mean?
Most of the ones you see floating around here were actually people that knew they meant to me. These are gifts that were given to me. That's kind of why I keep them here. They're special to me. People knew that they would mean something to me, and they probably knew I didn't have an album collection because my dog ate my albums, and that's not a joke. I had a dog in the late 90s who literally, I had a big long stack of records, right, from my childhood, and my dog was going into this closet, unbeknownst to me, and gnawing on the corners of the cardboard.
Wow.
I go in there, and I look one day, and there's just the cardboard around the edge of the vinyl. I was like, I didn't know. This was going on for months. Yeah, but I romanticize about the era of the album probably more than I should.
Yeah.
My kids will tell you I do. But why it was so special was that was my window to life as a child.
Yep. Me too.
Whereas the parents would read a newspaper, and I delivered newspapers, and I would watch TV once in a while. And the radio was amazing because I'd listen to Pirate Games, I'd listen to DVE and Dr. Demento and all this crazy shit on this little radio. But it was those tangible albums that I would hold and feel and read every single line of every
credit, lyric, everything you can think of.
I would read the inner circle in the
on the
center,
record.
and I would say, why does Bobby's Kiss Destroyer have different writing on his circle than mine? Mine has this NLB number, his has a different number. And even like on the album, they would etch something like on the vinyl
along the edges. Yep.
And I'm like, because you were starved for information.
Highly analytical for that stuff.
I'm the least analytical person in the world, though. That's the irony of it. I was just starved for information on something that moved me. This music moved me, and I knew that
you wanted to know everything about it.
Yeah, it was funny about the dichotomy, though, because I loved Kiss, which was very simple, straight ahead rock. But somehow my weird brain just loved Rush because of the uniqueness, right? Mm-hmm. But if someone gave me a Pink Floyd record or an ELP record, that was more my mom's music. You know what I mean? Like, this was intrinsically mine. Right. No one. And then when Tom Sawyer came out in '81 and became a hit, all of a sudden I'm like, kind of waned.
Yeah, because everybody else was
that. Yeah, right. Is that a human experience or what?
It is. And I mean, that's the same way with me and the bands that I love. Like, believe me, I still love the bands that were, and some still are big, but like, again, the thing my college roommate and I are going to do, we want to talk about like the obscure ones, because they became ours, and like, we had to explain them to people and where they're from.
Coney Hatch.
Yeah, I mean, well, do you remember one of my favorite bands and vocalists? You remember the band TNT by chance?
Oh, absolutely.
10,000 Lovers, that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
I mean, adore.
Right,
like,
on.
Top to bottom.
Right on.
And Tony Harnell is he's the vocalist.
Right on.
One of my favorite vocalists. And you either got them and know who they are today, or you don't. And like, I have friends that were like, they might have been more into that era than me, maybe. And they missed like the TNT thing and a couple. I'm like, how do you miss that? I don't understand. If you were that into it, they can name me some stuff that I'm like, oh, okay, I'm impressed. But then I say, well, what about TNT? You mean the song? I'm like, no, the band. And I'm like, okay,
not AC/DC, buddy.
Yeah. So, but it's whatever you were exposed to. And
so you did get the album thing as a kid. Like, that was your thing.
Yeah. I mean, it quickly
changed to CDs.
Well, it quickly changed to cassettes for.
Oh, yes. I'm sorry.
For all of the 80s. And I didn't own my first CD until, I want to say 90, 91.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah.
So
because I was, again, like, I was probably loyal to cassettes.
Yeah, I get it.
And all my equipment was cassettes. So I just held out as long as I could, and I finally went, you know what, I need to make the jump. Good.
No. I was just this is a crazy story. I had my first real job out of high school because I didn't want to go to college. Obviously, grades prove that. I got this job at a place called National Drager right up here in Robinson Township. And I'm 18, right? And I'm in this lunchroom with all these adults working with them day in, day out. And this guy comes in and he sets on the table this really weird silver box. And this is 84. And he goes, check this out. And he pulls out this little plastic box and opens it up, and there's this round disc, and it says Pink Floyd on. He puts it in, plugs this thing in, and nothing came out of it. But he lifted the lid open, and he set this silver disc in, closed it down.
And it was a CD.
It's a CD. It's a top-loading CD player.
In 84.
In 84. I guess the technology came out in 83. He goes, this is the future of the way you're going to listen to your music. And I'm like, get the fuck out of here.
I would have said the same thing.
Get the fuck out of here.
No, baby, I got my cassettes.
Yeah, come on, man. I got 20 cassettes I burned in my car. You know, my albums are still relevant, you know, because that's the source of the music, right? Boy, was that guy right.
Wow. And
4 years later, I got an whole album.
I want to know what that guy paid for that. Both, like the disc and the player.
He was an engineer.
Maybe he was part of the whole...
I don't know, but he said to me, because this is the future of music. Now, he couldn't play it, but we saw it spin on this lunch table. And he was he was an engineer. He was a different class than we were. But I looked at that going, that is insane. What is that called? It's a compact disc. You're going to call it a CD. I remember him saying that. It's pure as could be. And wasn't that guy right?
Yeah, and I mean, not how many people can say that you had that experience. That's pretty nuts.
And how much did that top-loading CD player actually cost him in 84?
That's what I said. I'm like, it's insane, unless he was somehow involved in the production of it or whatever. But
did you think it was cool when you got CDs, or when you saw, like, because it was smaller, did you think it was cool, or did you really immediately go, I can't read a goddamn liner notes?
Nah, I didn't think that. I was fascinated with and hopeful of the sound, like the quality, because it was all digital, and technically it wasn't.
It wasn't. No.
You thought? I mean,
saw a lot of AAD albums
you got
on there, right?
You got the impression it was, at least the perception.
The lie.
But to me, it was more so to the foreverness of a disc, as long as you took care of it.
No scratches.
Right.
Yeah, because there was an organic element of the needle hitting the vinyl.
Correct, and a cassette tape, and a cassette tape got worn out or broken or stretched, or so. That was the other thing. I'm like, these are forever, you know. And to me,
they weren't.
Well, they are still. I mean, I still have my.
They're digital, yeah.
Right.
But you can damage them.
You can, but if you take care of them, I mean, they'll for the most part last as long as you take care of them. And I still pull from them when I start like building a collection and I want to rip stuff off to a computer and blah blah blah.
Oh, it's still amazingly more personal than downloading something, right? I mean, you have something tangible you can hold. It's just smaller, and
you got a little small book instead of a big album.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. Again, it doesn't really matter. But I think there's a generation of us.
I agree.
That just we're so used to having that lost something.
Right, and I think like for you and I. Again, I dug albums and like, you know, Alive 2, things like that, looking at them, I remember them fascinating me, but I think that 4-year gap is where your true love of albums is different from like I think I really fell in love with CDs when they first came out.
Could be. Yeah.
I'm trying, like, I'm almost embarrassed. I was trying to think of the first CD that I bought, and I shouldn't be embarrassed, but because I was just, again, I was so sucked into tapes. But I'm gonna.
Come on, it was Menudo. Come on, now don't lie.
You're gonna think it's not far off, but I'm gonna try to lead into it. But when I heard this female's voice for the first time, I was just awestruck.
Okay.
Mariah Carey.
Oh yeah.
First disc.
Yeah,
her first album is
absolutely
insane, and like
the range.
Yeah, I never knew what she looked like. I just fell in love with her voice, and then I saw what she looked like, and I fell in love with that too. I'm not gonna lie.
Well, of course.
But I wanted like. It wasn't that was going to be my first disc. It just happened to be that. But I'm like, well, this is a good quality album to have on digital, you know, blah, blah, blah.
You're starting your collection, right?
So, but from
they
there...
were kind of cool to line up on a shelf, weren't they?
So then, you know, I had to go back and replace my entire cassette collection with CDs, which is what everybody did as the technology's changed. But
yeah,
some people did.
I remember, wow, that's a good question. My first CD, I think it was Kiss Lick It Up, because... And that would have been like 88 maybe.
Yeah, but
something
I mean,
like
it's still
that.
fairly early into when they really caught on.
Good point. So, not to get too nerdy, but
Let's get nerdy.
there was the early pressings, if I use that word, of remasters. Well, remasters meaning the remaster to digital.
Right.
Were fucking horrible.
Yeah.
There's a warble in there. Like I still have. This is unbelievable, but I still have an old first pressing CD of the record Kiss Asylum, where it was. And it was funny because the album came out in '85, at the same time that the CDs were
starting to come on the
right.
scene. Yep.
The point was the first pressing of that record to digital was so poorly done. I know they were all mastered by George Marino at Sterling Sound.
Right.
That was like every record, right?
Right.
But whatever George was fucking doing, whatever he was smoking there,
I was just gonna say
he wasn't doing much. That, and it's been remastered and redone multiple times in releases. It's Kiss, right? How many greatest hits
Right.
albums are there?
Right.
The point is, it's so much more pure now, the experience. But that first CD to me is unlistenable. I can
Right.
tell immediately. Put it in like, oh my god! This. Now at the time we didn't really
Right.
listen critically, right?
Right.
But what was it with the early pressings of CDs that were so poor?
I mean,
Sampling rates?
Well, yeah, and that's what I was going to say. Like, even think about. I compare that to like maybe music videos.
Okay.
So people translate from a VHS tape that they had to converting it to digital, which I've done,
Yeah.
and posting it on YouTube and stuff. And then you want to blow it up to an HD monitor or
Yeah.
whatever.
A 480 lines
And
of
it's
resolution. And
these
it's
huge
grainy.
blocks, yeah.
Yeah.
So I mean, they were just taking old analog sources and making them digital, which, and then there's a process in between that was brand new. So who knows what the outcome of that was going to be?
That's what happened.
And I think that's what happened originally. They're like, oh, we fucked that up. We got to figure out a way to make this better if we're going to take old masters.
Right.
And then software came along where it interpolated it and upgraded it. Like it upgraded the sound before it made it to that disc. And that's the same with, like, you remember video discs?
Oh yeah.
And-
VCDs or something.
Yeah, VCDs. I forget what the other name of that was, but they were
Laser discs.
Laser discs. That's what I'm thinking. The big ones.
Yes.
That's the same thing. I think they started off with a similar thing, although laser discs were pretty good. So they must have had a software early on that was
They were
able to
expensive too.
kind of like upgrade the video. And even now, like I see, videos in general, music videos, a couple of them stick out where a band or the record company or whoever was associated made an effort to upgrade the quality of the video to an
Michael
HD
Jackson
quality.
stuff.
Yeah, where it wasn't originally. So
I see. Like up, they call it upscaling or something.
correct. Yeah. And I think it's even beyond that now. It's better than that now.
Wow.
But I think the same thing happened with audio. And over the years, the technology, the software, and everything was able to improve the transition from just hard old analog masters to going digital.
Okay, so a little aside.
Are we done being nerdy?
No, we're going to get real nerdy here in a second. I'm coming at this from a guitarist standpoint.
Okay.
I'm asking a vocalist.
Oh, boy.
And we're going to coexist in the same room, believe it or not.
Oh, boy.
But would you not agree that early digital effects were fucking horrible?
Yeah.
Early guitar digital effects were just...
Yeah.
But at some point, maybe it was even early 90s, I don't know, but at some point, it got so good. My question to you is, as we sit in 2021... is analog actually not even relevant anymore because digital oversampling is so good right now that the emulation is so good from a vocal standpoint that tube mics and all these high-end analog mics, $8,000 mics, are really kind of just a thing to spend money on because the digital technology actually is so good you can't distinguish in your ear between the two.
Yeah,
It's hype.
Yeah, I kind of agree. Like, I think whether it's a true perception, like somebody hearing it or not, but I think the hardcores will tell you no, there's nothing like analog.
Well, of course.
But I
used to be one
But
of
I
those.
think of people like my friend Rick Gallagher, incredible jazz pianist in the city and stuff, has released
No doubt.
many albums on his own and stuff. And we sit and have conversations about. He's like, dude, he goes, the Baby Grand I can pull up in Ableton Live is maybe better than the ones I've recorded with. And for him to say that, and he's
What's that say?
old school hardcore,
What's
for him
that
to say
say?
that, I'm like, yeah, I mean, the technology has surpassed, at least caught up to or surpassed the original analog sound, whatever you want to call it.
Why I asked that is in my home right now, I have it's called a Roland VG7.
Yep.
Whatever, but it's from 2000. It's a digital modeling amp.
Yep.
And some things are great, some effects are not. But you add 20 years on to Roland's ability to really dial it in with technology. The newer products are just freaking distinguishable.
Yep.
There's no tinny, there's no warble.
And they're smaller, and they can hold more. I mean, and I think that's a huge, huge thing because, like you're saying, all the layers and things like that to get that sound, it takes so much processing and space and memory and all that stuff
so that's a driver.
To encapsulate it, yeah.
That's a driver. Yeah, and I think, and that's my whole point is I used to not be a fan of digital technology, and granted, analog tube amp.
Right.
I was surrounded by them.
Right.
I was old school. But, and even transistors to me were just garbage because they were just noisy. But when some people would show me these incredible digital modeling and some of the rack units, I mean, it's not distinguishable anymore. I mean, we're just kidding ourselves.
I agree.
I mean, even
within my band, I mean, Suitcase Johnny Wacklow, he's not in the band anymore. He's a founding member of Nomad, but like he, I should know. Oh, Vox. He's a big Vox guy.
Well, how can you not be there?
Right.
Legendary.
And he started out with, probably a more standard type amp and moved along to like this pedal system that had all that stuff. And there were times where we had to do a show in an extremely small area and he'd just bring the pedal. And you'd never know the difference.
Oh, convenience-wise, the best thing ever.
Yeah, exactly.
It's just getting over the mental hurdle that you're playing through a digital interface.
Exactly.
And is it going to produce my sound?
Right, and you don't have that thing behind you hitting you in the back that
you don't feel the wind.
Right. That some people love.
Good point. That's a very good point. But I mean, you can still have the cabinet. Yeah. The interface could be digital.
True. Or you can. I mean, you could have if you're using a wedge, you'd get that feeling too. But I would say it's probably not the same as an amp. But we're going all over the place technology-wise.
That's
but
all right.
Then we jump to in-ears, which our band is completely in-ears.
Yeah, which has ruined music, by the way, or live music.
Well, yes and no. I mean, I'm a one ear in, one ear out. Yeah, I mean, it changed my singing.
Okay, why? How?
Because I had to survive. Like, our early bands, even some of the people that were Nomad were in early rock bands with me and stuff. Bob Kunkel and I have been together forever.
Yeah.
Where I was surrounded with sound to the point where I couldn't hear myself, to the point where it was affecting my hearing. I mean, all kind of stuff. And I wasn't a person that could hear all that and filter out everything else and tune my voice the way I needed to do it.
Okay.
As soon as in-ears came along, man, I'm trying to think if I started out with being kind of a both in-ear, both ears in guy or not. I think I did because I wanted to block out some of the loud. But shortly thereafter, I became like a one ear in, one ear out guy because I needed that natural
ambiance.
Surround.
Yeah.
But I also needed to hear my voice clearly to project it the right way I wanted to without. To me, it was more so in the early days I was killing my voice and I was almost yelling, forcing out because I couldn't hear myself. I thought I had, even though I had a mic in front of me, I felt I had to be that way.
A lot of singers probably run.
They do.
That,
I mean, and like you were talking about being friends with Abby. From
Poverty Neck.
Yeah, I wanted to say
Hillbilly Way.
Yeah, I wanted to say Poverty Neck, but I don't say Poverty Neck.
They were a great band.
Oh, they were, but
Hillbilly Way is a great band.
But I think Abby would prefer we say Hillbilly Way.
I know.
And it's THW these days.
It
by
is.
The way.
It is THW.
But anyway, like him and I think had conversations about in-ears, and I know they use them currently, but he hated them for years and years and years, and I'm like, dude, you got to give them more of a chance. I said, I see where you're coming from. I go, and I was kind of there at one point, but they saved my voice and they changed the way I sang. And, when I can hear myself clearly all the time, I know that I can control myself better. I don't have to force it. I don't have to put more stress on my voice and stuff. So that's just me.
I can't help it. This is just such a funny story when I talk about having monitors and in-ears. I was listening to an autobiography. Did you ever hear this story of when Johnny Rotten finally got monitors that he could actually hear? They were like a year in, and he never had monitors, so they had no money.
Wow.
So he's just singing, and he's wondering why people really aren't like getting it, you know? I thought I sounded great. And then the first time we borrowed monitors from the opening act, but from another act, we were at the opening act, and we were using the monitors from the headliner. And the first time I heard myself, I said, "Wow, I sound really bad." But why stop now? I might as well keep doing it. But he ended up, like, I guess it was so disturbing to him, he ended up jamming the mic stand through the monitor because he couldn't believe
that part of the story I might remember.
Bad, you know. It's just funny, but it's true. I mean, he probably never knew what he sounded like,
and that was me. Like, my first bands were hard rock bands, and I mean, you remember places like Someplace Else?
Oh my God, yes.
And it was. I mean, it was the place to go deaf. If you would have stayed there for your life playing, you would definitely be deaf. And that was the thing, like surrounded with walls of sound from every angle, you can't hear yourself. You might think you're singing one note, but you're really not. And that was me a lot of the time. And I'm like, and I mean, I didn't start using in-ears until way late in the game. But
yeah. Any after effects? I mean, do you have ringing now, or do you lose any?
No, and it's I don't to this moment. And I think, probably since Nomad's been in existence and being in like the country music scene, it's definitely a little bit laid back. So that saved me to some degree. And then there was a big span of years where I wasn't in a group and I wasn't performing live, so that helped me too. It was a shorter span where it was full on. But like I think of like my mother suffers from serious bad tinnitus, however you pronounce
tinnitus.
It. And I almost have to think that might be my future regardless, because I expose myself to a lot of loud stuff coming along, even going to live shows where my mom like did not, as far as I can think of, and she's dealing with it big time.
Isn't that strange?
It is,
because I have it, and it at times it's very disturbing.
Okay, is it for real though? Is it tinnitus or tinnitus?
I call it tinnitus.
Okay, I've heard people argue about it.
Medical professionals call it tinnitus.
Oh, okay. So there are two schools at least. I didn't know.
I've heard professional artists who have it call it tinnitus. I've heard them call it tinnitus. Tinnitus is easier to say, right?
Yes, I agree. It's more comfortable. Yeah,
I can't imagine, like, how can you take any of these legacy bands that have played forever, how can they not have some kind of issues?
And I almost assure you they do. I mean, like, I want to say, I think I'm right in saying that, like, did Petty have it?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, I think he dealt with it pretty bad. And I mean, I can't imagine. And I'm trying to think, maybe it was just a movie I'm thinking of where they switched somebody to ears who had pretty severe tinnitus, and it definitely helped them, but they still had hearing loss and things like that.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I can't imagine exposing yourself to it. Like Kiss, for example. I mean, think of the years they were just cranking it out. And to be at one of their concerts, I mean,
loudest band in the world, man.
Yeah,
I mean, that was a moniker for a while. Whether it was true or not didn't matter. Right?
I've never heard them ever discuss it in any of their lives. That doesn't mean they don't have it, but
yeah, I know Paul's has. He was born deaf in one ear, so he only has hearing in one ear.
Never knew that.
So I don't know how that's really affecting. I wonder how that would affect your vocals,
Yeah, I mean, like if I plugged my ear and did that all the time, that would be rough. I mean, I think that would be rough. Now, again, like basing it on me, I was a one ear out guy. In-ears would have helped me in that sense, where I'm getting full everything, at least in one ear.
Who's the greatest rock and roll singer you've ever heard? I'm putting you on the spot. Oh, yeah. Who's the greatest vocalist, period? I'm putting you on the spot.
Are we talking about skill level, or are we talking about overall whole package?
You're not looking at them. You're just listening to them. So if you put the record on, you didn't have an album sleeve to look at, and you just listen to bodies of material, and it's just whatever. And again, it's specific to what you dig. It isn't a talent thing. It's specific to what vocalist really moves you like no one else does.
I mean, I guess if it was a gut reaction or gun to your head, Freddie Mercury is the first guy that comes to my mind. I mean,
can you describe why?
He wasn't the most technically incredible vocalist, but what he could do, he had a great falsetto, he had a great gruff, he had somewhere in the middle a solid where he could belt. And I think the bottom line with him was just he could emote everything he sang. Like, you felt everything he sang. And, you know, the fact that he was a known openly gay guy in a time where it wasn't anywhere near acceptable, and he was singing about gay things.
No question.
And people still loved it and accepted it. To me, that it proved that he conveyed his emotions about it. Like, you know, I think of I Want to Break Free, and the music video comes to mind and stuff. I'm like, to me, like, parents at that time seeing that, their heads had to explode. But kids that love Queen, they didn't give two shits. They were like,
yeah, and that's the power of music.
100%.
That's the power of music.
Yep.
When your love for that group of people and their art is so strong that you're not worried about a label that's put on them that might be socially unacceptable. And
I mean, again, I go back to, I think, two bands stand out. There are definitely more, but like Queen and Rush, they were just in their own world, and people loved them for it. Yep. They did whatever the hell they wanted, and people loved it. They ate it up. And like that, they're another example of, if you don't hear the whole album, you don't have a clue who Queen is, because it's just, Sheer Heart Attack. That album was just insane. And I mean, from all that jazz, all that stuff, I mean, it was everywhere. And I mean,
it's an experience. That album is a listening experience in and of its own right.
Yeah.
Whereas I would probably say there are not a lot of casual Rush fans. People either really dig them or dig them moderately, or no one just casually. Maybe, that Tom Sawyer song's pretty cool. You might get a couple of those people. Right. Or you have people that just can't stand them because it requires effort.
Right.
It's a band that requires effort.
Right. Either don't get them or can't stand them. And the reason they can't stand them, they probably couldn't even explain. A lot of times.
Exactly right.
You know what I mean?
Oh, it's the voice. Or the songs are too long. Or
too complex. Or I don't understand what they're singing about.
That's okay. That's their choice.
Right.
And they're missing out on, to me. I think they're missing out on a lot. But there's no casual Rush fan. And probably kind of the same with Queen. I look at Queen like you're really, there are hits. There's more hits with Queen than Rush. But ultimately, to really understand the entire body of work, it's pretty deep.
Right.
You take Kiss, it's not deep.
Right.
I mean, every song kind of stands on its own. I would say Destroyer may have had a theme. The Elder Day tried to have a theme, but no other of their albums need to be heard in their entirety to get the fucking vibe.
Exactly. But the thing about Kiss is, I think, like, again, this is years later, like, if you tear apart some of their songs, old and even into the newer stuff, they're better than you think they are.
Song structure-wise, for sure.
And even performance. Like, I don't think people regard Gene Simmons as, they might regard him as an average to not great bass player.
I would disagree.
I 100% disagree. And if you listen, I mean,
it's not a bass line.
He had some shit going on, but
all Beatles fans too. And I think that kind of like helped the song structure, right?
Agreed. And I mean, that's the thing. Like, even with the Beatles, and I'm not an expert for that. I love them, I respect them, but not an expert. But it all came down to like just that melody and that song, you know what I mean? So, and I go back to the Kiss tunes, like, Flaming Youth, Shout It Out Loud, all those tunes. All I heard and cared about was the melody and the energy and the theme. At the time, I didn't give a shit about the performance and who was doing what. And I mean, knowing what I know now as well, I think of, Peter Criss as a drummer, wasn't the greatest drummer, but he played important stuff where it needed to be played.
It was the right four guys at the right time.
Exactly. It was the chemistry at the time, no doubt.
Yeah, I think so too. And it's fascinating to be the age we are and to look back at some of the things that we loved growing up and look at it now with a different kind of ear. And for you being a vocalist over the past 35, 40 years, for you to go back and look at that music, my next question would be, can you really appreciate music as a fan and separate that critical ear? Because I know, as a very average guitar player that I am, going back and listening to early Kiss tunes makes me appreciate Ace Frehley more than I might have when I wasn't really playing. Right. Does that make any sense? Like, I would dismiss him as being, well, he's no Eddie Van Halen, or he's no, he's no Richie Blackmore.
Right.
But when I became a player, I would say, wow, there's more going on here than meets the eye. So can you listen to music and enjoy it just for what it is, or do you find yourself tearing songs apart?
Well, because I'm like an old curmudgeon at this point, and I
don't think so.
Well, I mean, I don't. It's rare that I can listen to a song, and I got to say, like a lot of country music these days, which I barely listen to anymore. I'm going to be honest.
Right.
But it's hard for me to listen to a song without kind of like dissecting it. There are just tunes that. Newer tunes or from bands I love and stuff that I hear out of the box. It just might be straight ahead rock tunes, and I'm like air drumming to them and stuff. And again, they just give me a good feeling, so I don't necessarily tear them apart, and I understand it for what it is. But yeah, most tunes I'll be like, I don't like what he did there vocally, or the melody's boring, or there should have been a guitar solo there instead of nothing. I mean, So
your experience just different than an average fan in that you're looking for something different in the song before you determine to say, okay, that's okay.
Yeah, I think. And I mean, here's the thing. I cannot play any instrument well, and I'm ashamed of that, and I've been for years. I really am. I mean, I do consider
I can't play an instrument well either.
I
do pretend to.
Yeah, and I do consider my voice an instrument. I really do, and I think I'm okay at it. I think I could be much better at it, but I just never, and I don't put enough time into it. But the one thing I've always appreciated, and I like on every level, every instrument, like there's drummers I adore, there's guitarists I adore and respect and know exactly to me that they are gods.
Right.
Keyboardists, everything. And I would say I'm a little out of the ordinary in that way for not playing an instrument and being just a vocalist.
In what context? Like, what do you mean out of the ordinary?
Well, the fact that I really like I can give you a list of drummers and guitarists and everything that I could just watch them play.
Okay.
Period.
Okay.
Like drummers, Mike Portnoy.
Oh, yeah.
Phenomenal.
Another planet.
They're like
his replacement Mangini. Right?
Yeah.
Unbelievable.
They're like they're the newer versions of Rush.
Yeah. Good
Dream
point.
Theater is one of my favorite.
You hear that, Alex and Getty? Go get him.
Yeah.
Start playing music again.
Yeah. I mean, like Dream Theater is one of my favorite bands, and they were a game changer for me in '92 or whatever.
In what way?
They probably,
because I didn't see that coming. That's more progressive and more. I don't know. I didn't see that coming.
I don't know. Like they Rush at one point said if we were ever going to replace Neil, they'd pick Portnoy. And to me, I hear so much Rush.
There's no question.
In Dream Theater.
Okay.
I really do.
Interesting.
And it was, again, like I was blown away by the fact that the complexity of their tunes, the length of their tunes, which I was never a long tune guy.
Yeah. Well, you're the vocalist.
Yeah, true. And but their tunes, the talent that every one of the musicians had, but again, it went back to the melodies and the meanings of the songs just totally embraced me. Images and Words to me is a masterpiece.
Yeah.
And Awake, their follow up to that, masterpieces. I was just having a conversation with someone, a person about it on Facebook the other day, and she hadn't heard Awake, and I'm like, she's like, I know Dream Theater, or I know Images and Words, like note for note, word for word. I'm like, me too. I go, you need to check out Awake and some stuff after that. So, I mean, I think I'm a little different in that way. The fact that I'm not skilled in any way as an instrumentalist, and I'm only a vocalist, but I still I adore and appreciate when I see a kick-ass fill or drum fill or just something really different in a guitar lead, that kind of stuff that I know I'll sit and have conversations potentially with other vocalists, and they don't even think about that stuff. Okay. They don't look at that stuff.
Okay.
And I'm not calling myself special. It's just something I really grew to appreciate over the years.
Yeah.
And I think it's for a lot of the bands that I liked early on, and then different things through pop, and then getting back into the rock and metal stuff where I'm like, wow, there's some just incredible players out there. And, I think of Paul Gilbert, who's from here, just phenomenal songwriter and monster guitarist, all around cool guy, can sing. I mean, I want to punch him in the face because he's so talented.
Have you seen his version of the Spice Girls song?
No.
When Two Become One?
No, I can tell you right off the bat.
You got to go to YouTube.
I'll check it out.
You got to go to YouTube and download that. It's unbelievable. No, it's like a real thing. I think he started out doing it in the clinics in Japan as a joke. and it caught on. Then he had to go and release it.
That's great.
I think so. But
That's great.
talk about the writing process for you. Are you writing during the pandemic? Have you been able to write during the pandemic?
Sadly, I mean, here's the thing. Like, I have a I mean, I'm sure you've heard of the app Evernote.
No.
It's basically
a memo note.
Yeah,
or
essentially.
like
I mean, you can do everything
note
with
to
it.
yourself.
For years, either a voice recording.
Elephant logo on it or something?
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, okay.
So for years, I either do voice notes on my phone or use Evernote. And my writing process, quote unquote, is it usually comes with a phrase or wording that stand out to me, and I say I can make a story out of that, or I can create a song out of that, and then melody, or occasionally a melody, something might stick in my head that I think is original. It's probably been done a billion times before, and then I build from that. And because I don't really play anything, I rely on Rick Gallagher, again, a close friend of mine, to put a foundation to the song, or somebody in the band, a guitarist, just to put a rhythm guitar behind it or whatever. I might have a beat in mind, but usually, Bob is usually the guy. Well, I mean, Bob's a phenomenal songwriter on his own in every way, but he's usually the guy that helps me build the rhythm of things. Because sometimes
can you hear it? Can you hear the melodic nature of the words?
Yeah, I can, and that's I feel just honored to be able to do that, because I talk to other singers and stuff, and I wouldn't write when I can't hear a melody, and I'm like, wow, and I'm like, wow, I just think it's because I consumed so much music in my lifetime, and like I was able, even the first band I was telling you about, I think I contributed to like 50% of a 12-song album. And 3 or 4 of those songs are like kind of solidly mine from start to finish. I just gave people instruction as to how I wanted it to sound. Yeah. And we worked through it until we were like, yeah, that's it.
Yeah.
So, but like I hear, when I hear a phrase in particular, I'm like, I've never heard that as a song. That could be a great story. And a lot of them are common phrases that we use, and whether that's kind of like the cliche thing to do, it is in country music a lot.
You don't say.
Yeah. But sometimes I try to work a different angle from it and things like that. I mean, George Elliott and I, George, monster bassist, he's in Nomad and 50 other things. He wrote a tune for our latest EP called A Day Late that you have.
Right.
And he came to us and he called it, he goes, this is my, and he would be probably almost ashamed for me to say this, because he kind of rebelled against the newer hard rock, hair metal stuff after he thought it got watered down. Okay. So he came to us and he's like, this is my Kickstart My Heart version of a country tune. And I'm like, okay, I'm in. And he had the whole song kind of down. Guitar, he's a guitarist too, right? Guitarist and bass parts down. Bob put a rhythm behind it and stuff. And he usually prefers to, like all of us, I think we kind of prefer to write our entire song as compared to doing it as a group. It's just always been that way. Got it. Although there are some contributions here and there, but he could not come up with a melody or an idea for the tune. And he's like, would you mind playing with it? I'm like, dude, I'd be honored, So took a while, and I came up with a theme first, a title and a theme that he wasn't big on until he heard the whole tune. Got it. The whole tune's called Drive Me to Drink. Okay. And you would automatically think, you're going to drive me crazy. You're going to drive me to start drinking. But if you listen to the tune is, you're taking me out drinking. Like, you owe me this, blah, blah, blah. So it's a little, it's a little twist on the tune, but the lyrics in the middle section and things like that, I incorporated like Uber into it and all kind of other stuff. And the end result, I was surprised that the first time he heard it, he's like, dude, this is exactly what I envisioned. I'm like, perfect. And it came out good. So that's just one of the...
Is it hard to find originality today?
I would say, yeah, just only because, you've heard the phrase, it's already been done. It's,
Yeah, but they ain't been saying that for decades, though.
Right.
They were telling Jimmy Page that, right?
Right. And I want to say a couple ideas that I've had were original, but, like there were a tune off of our first disc that Gio Bennett, original founding member of Nomad, he's not in the band anymore either. I'm totally drawing a blank on the title, but it has a big string intro.
Okay.
And we loved the string intro, and it's a ballad. And later on, like years after the fact, him and I are two of the biggest Bon Jovi fans on the face of the earth. It's friggin' Never Say Goodbye. It's like, it's not the entire like phrase.
Well, obviously that was the internal inspiration for it, right? Maybe?
Not really.
Or coincidentally.
I mean, it was total coincidence.
Right.
He wrote another tune called Farmer's Daughter and has this guitar riff at the beginning. And I had never heard that riff, I thought, in my life. And I have to go ask him or dig it up. But somebody came to him and go, you ripped that off from so-and-so. And Gio, again, was a fan of this group. It was a group. And he's like, I never put the two together.
There's only so many finite notes, right?
Right.
There's only so many ways. I mean, come on.
Right. I think it comes down to, presentation a lot, and even the way you sing something. You can sound like an insane person as compared to just somebody that sings.
Yes.
And people dig that.
Yes. Agreed.
Or
Agreed.
Or going back to the grunge thing or the punk thing. There's just an anger. I mean, it's I just think combining, to me, like today's people were looking for everything they can grasp that they relate to today. Mm-hmm. And I think that artists that try to touch on different things, different eras, different genres, and combine it, those are the people that are most successful.
Do you like Greta Van Fleet?
When I first heard them,
question. Ask anyone our age that.
Yeah, when I first heard them, I'm like, wow, they're pretty good. And I was happy that they were a young band that were trying to, well, I don't know if they were trying to emulate Zeppelin. You have to think they are.
Sure sounds like it to me.
But the more I heard them, and the more I heard people talk about them and point out things, it made me think like they're not all they're cracked up to be.
In what way?
They're kind of like created. They're kind of staged. It was all intentional, and they really weren't pulling from inspiration or anything like that.
Oh, I think they were drive. I think the idea was that there's a need for that kind of music, and someone got those kids to believe into it. That there's a marketing niche there because it's not being filled. And
that may be the case. Yeah, I mean, I agree with you there. So yeah, I mean, they're much more listenable than a lot of stuff, I'll tell you that. But would I go buy the product? Nah, probably not. I'll go listen to Zeppelin first.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to dislike them because they sound a lot like Zeppelin, because I like Zeppelin.
Yeah,
so,
and I don't dislike them. I just don't care about them.
Yeah, I don't know if their original stuff is going to resonate with me, only because it's too reminiscent of something else.
Right, that you love.
Right, it's almost a violation.
Yeah,
it's being, but there's parts of it I listen. I'm like, wow, that is like, had that come out like 30 years ago.
Right.
I would be like, they should be playing this on the radio instead of like Depeche Mode.
Yeah, and but even today, I would say, for all the young groups and solo artists and things that are emulating things that I loved, if they could bring that back, and not necessarily bring the groups that I love back, because they're all older now and stuff. A lot of them are still touring and playing and stuff, like I said. Yeah. But to bring that sound back would make me happy. I mean, because I want to hear, that energy and that happiness and that kick of that guitar. And
is that what is missing in modern music, do you think?
I do, yeah. I mean, but again, is that two old fuddy-duddies saying, nah?
Could be.
I just like, even the rock of the last 20 years, there's like just small bits and pieces where I'm like, yeah.
Simmons thinks it's dead. Gene Simmons says, and he said it 8-9 years ago, rock and roll is dead.
Yeah.
You think that was an overstatement, or you think there's any validity to that?
I mean, it's tough. I mean, I think it'll never be what it was. But again, is that an old guy saying that? I don't know. But I think of my buddy Ray, and I think of Korn, who I was never ever a fan of.
Now they're classic rock.
They're classic rock, or are they classic new metal? What are they?
I don't know.
But yeah, but like, they're, again, since it's not necessarily since he joined the band, but like they were at a point when he joined the band where they were not in a good space.
Yeah.
And he walked into this band not knowing much about them, not really digging their music too much, but he auditioned for them and blew their minds and stuff. But he walked in having really never used drugs in his life, barely ever drinking, and them seeing that, and they're like, maybe I don't have to be this way.
Got it.
I don't know.
One religious, right?
Head. Yeah, Brian Welch. Yeah.
Yeah, he went.
He left the band for years because
Is he back?
He's back.
He's still straight.
He's on the straight beaten path.
Wow.
And the thing is, one of the reasons he came back was because he saw they made a change, not an incredible one at the time, but it's been a growing, improving change. And with that, like, again, I would have never listened to a Korn record in my life.
Yeah, not my thing.
They released a record or two early on with Ray, and he was kind of green to it. Like, they were writing and saying, play this.
Right.
But it changed quickly, and he's a full-fledged member of Korn now.
Very cool.
And their newer albums, like, I never thought I would give a chance, and there's tunes on there. I'm like Jonathan Davis now is a master of melody and
can now sing
and things like and he's trying to sing in a good space. But my whole point of bringing that up was they're a band that they still have a pretty crazy following.
Oh yeah,
pretty loyal following in the sense that they can play arenas, they can play amphitheaters with groups, with another group or two, and fill the place and rock the place out. Like, I've been to a few now where I'm looking around going, people are like, they're just totally into it. So I'm like, in that sense, and maybe I shouldn't have used them as the example is Rock Dead, but I just think that they're an example of bands that have survived, that are still making original new music,
no question,
releasing new albums,
no question,
and they're not relying on the album sales anymore. But
who is
yeah, exactly. But to be touring at that level still gives me a little bit of hope. And I mean, bands like Greta Van Fleet hopefully are igniting that as well to kind of bring that back. I mean, I don't know. Like I said,
kids don't have guitar heroes anymore.
Yeah,
there's no guitar hero. Right?
You're right.
I mean, think about it.
You're right. And the ones that I see, like I said, are young kids on YouTube.
Oh yeah,
ripping off.
It's amazing.
Doing like Paul Gilbert solos and Vita Bratta and Eddie Van Halen and all that stuff.
Oh, they're amazing. And I think that's where, I mean, in the 2000s and beyond, it was a little lean. You still had Eddie Van Halen. You had Zakk Wylde. Dimebag passing in 2004, kind of like left a whole bunch of kids with no hero.
Right.
But who is there now?
Yeah.
From a recording artist standpoint.
Present day, I mean, there's just, I can't think of any. I mean, nobody comes to my mind except the legends that have been here forever.
And they're not going to be around forever.
Yeah, and we're finding that out every day. It's just,
Yeah, and life will, and that's what I'm saying, is it dead in the essence that it's got a shelf life. Another generation from now, is it even going to be relevant? Well,
again, we were talking about that cyclical thing. I think maybe the cycle's bigger than we think it is in that sense. I mean, longer, so that's bad for us.
Good point.
But like, maybe it's 20, 30 years, and I mean, it's going to come around again. I mean, you think about, I
hope so.
You think about maybe there's so many angles. I mean, because of the computer age and stuff, it may have totally thrown things to the wind.
You think?
I'm saying because of, again, like, people aren't going to feel motivated to create music because they can't survive on it.
No, it hasn't been motivated for a while, and I think it hasn't been motivated probably since mid-2000s, because by the time it all got fleshed out with the Napster debacle, it became pretty apparent that the legacy artists were not going to win anything because they couldn't stop it, right? I mean, you're an IT specialist. How could they possibly stop downloading? It's impossible.
And it hasn't stopped.
Yeah, how can
it's
you
just
do
done
it?
A little bit differently right now. Like I was telling you, I mean, I'm not going to say it anywhere because it just it worsens the problem. But you can still steal a lot of music, and it sucks, And again, it goes back to the youth in general saying, well, why would I need to pay for that? I can.
Right, and that's an interesting I'm sure you
why
probably
would I
seen,
pay for that?
Yeah, I'm sure you've seen artists talk about that. I've just watched interesting Joe Rogan podcasts with artists talking about that exact thing. And Rogan was the standpoint, well, would you really want to kind of stop someone from being exposed to your music because now you have a new fan who might come to a concert to pay a ticket to do all this stuff, and all your legacy artists are like, doesn't matter. It's either theft or it's not theft. You can't. There's no. It's like I don't have a right to go use your car this afternoon because I need it, right?
Exactly. Yeah, I mean you're right, and I mean, artists don't have a choice on the. Would you rather not have that artist or have them buy a ticket? I mean, what are they going to say? I mean, because it's either
take anything at this point.
Yeah, it's all or nothing. It's like, okay, push them away, and you lose that concert ticket and merchandise at the concert, or accept it and move on. And most artists, they're either again touring on their legacy, or creating new music that maybe folks don't want to necessarily hear, and then combining that with their hits.
Oh, it's flipped. Initially the thing was you toured to support the record sales.
And people wanted to hear it.
And if you got T-shirts and stuff, and some bands took that to the extreme, but if you sold merch, that was cool. Maybe helped some of the touring costs.
Right.
But you basically wanted to promote that record.
Right.
And now they're touring to eat.
Yep.
That's why ticket prices are high. Meet and greets are there.
Yep.
T-shirts are $80.
Yep. I mean, to me, here's how bad it is. Like there was a point in time in our band. I mean, we were focusing on merchandise and doing really well. I mean, even to this moment. I mean, when we expose ourselves to a new audience, surprisingly, like we'll sell. We have these little just combo things where we'll sell all 4 of our discs for a discount.
Got it.
And we sell a ton of. I'm really surprised and happy about that. But
like the actual physical disc, it's a tangible thing.
Yeah.
See,
but I mean, as compared to just buying one,
they'll
buy all 4.
Yeah,
I'm like,
it's smart marketing on your behalf.
Well, it's just to get rid of product. You know what I mean? Move product. But my reason for bringing that up is we'll open for a national act or a touring act, and they start seeing us setting up our merchandise, and they're like, "No, you can't sell merchandise." And it's like, at one point, I think we did.
That's interesting.
We did a support thing for Rascal Flatts. This is years ago, and we were starting to set up our stuff, and they're like, "Didn't anybody tell you that you're not selling any merch? You don't compete with our merch sales?" I'm like, "You really think we're going to put a dent in your merch sales?"
Wow, that's interesting.
And it
really
happened a lot.
That's interesting.
So that's where it comes down to. That's the survival thing: the ticket and the merchandise.
Wow, how about that?
So I was like,
they were worried about the undercard hurting them.
Yeah, the very small, pebble on a beach undercard compared to somebody like Rascal Flatts.
Yeah.
So,
well, again, the music, how can they monetize that? I mean, now obviously you're elite, you're Taylor Swift's and all that, but I mean, is she making money on her new music? I mean, really making money? Like, how's that work?
Yeah, I do think there are just certain exceptional artists, and like she grabbed, she was like Debbie Gibson of the Debbie Gibson era. She grabbed that young teen female demographic that they would die for her, and I do think there was. I mean, in fact, there was a young female fiddler we had a female fiddler in our band early on,
okay.
But we also had a couple female fiddlers that would sit in when that girl couldn't do it and stuff.
Yeah,
they were both
right on.
They were like they were in their mid-teens when they were performing with us. And I just remember the one girl who to this day I think is a huge Taylor Swift fan. She actually has a record deal these days too. She's a Americana artist, but she was just hooked on Taylor Swift, and she was she's like, "You got to listen to this." And she was buying discs. This is a teenager in the, mid 2000s, early 2000s. So I think there are those just few standout artists where they grab a demographic where these kids are talking their parents into getting them product. And it might be merchandise, not necessarily music, but I think a chunk of it in her case was music.
Yeah.
They were buying her music, but it's rare.
I think where the missed opportunity is that I think this way. I think people love tangible stuff. That's why you're seeing a resurgence for vinyl. It's not there's an audio difference, or it's
Some
just,
people think there is.
Yeah. Well, let me just explain something to you. So when they're taking this old master tape, they're not really pulling from the original master. They're pulling from a digitalized version of the masters. So when they're putting that digitalized version on the vinyl,
It's not.
it's basically you're listening to now a organic version of a CD,
Right. Yep.
and paying like $60 for that album. But
Yep.
whatever. But I don't think artists do enough to provide that cool, unique, tangible stuff. And the script was written in the 70s, and Kiss was one of the bands who did it with throw all this shit in a record.
Yep. The Love Gun.
All that stuff.
Yep.
Why do we remember that stuff? Because it meant something
Yep.
to us at that time.
Yep.
That's how you're going to get kids back. I mean, because there's nothing sexy, cool, or, there's no prize with downloading a song.
Right. Yep.
Give them something to hold,
it's
man.
it's in the it's in the cosmos. You hear it in your ears. That's it.
Give them something to hold.
Yep. I agree. And I mean that physical album, whatever, CD, booklet, all that. I agree.
Maybe Taylor Swift is doing that now.
I mean, I think at least she did early on, but I think streaming has really took over in the last 5 years. Would you say?
But how is anyone making money on that
They're
outside
not.
of the streaming company?
They're not. Yeah, I mean, you're making 0.0014 something cent per stream, and I'm like, and there'll be a time or two where I'll chime in on like there was a time or two for the band where I'd chime in and go, you could stream this tune, or you could pay 99 cents for this one song
and own it,
and it would be yours forever. You could burn it to a disc and hopefully not burn it for 50 other people, but if you compare that to the less than a cent for listening to that song one time, and a lot of young people's response would be, well, I'm only going to listen to it a few times and move on to the next thing.
Again, that's the whole concept of music becoming come on, it's disposable.
Yep.
That's a horrible thing.
And to me, it's just like
so horrible.
It is. And to me, it's just so. It means so much to me to revisit songs,
Right.
and rediscover songs and
Right.
songs that I skipped over on a disc that I never listened to. I'm like, why didn't I listen to this? Why did I skip? Why don't I know this?
Yeah.
And I was telling you about my roommate and I. My roommate from college and I doing this podcast, we do that to each other all the time. He'll shoot me a tune. He's like, have you ever heard this? I go, no. Where did it come? I just found it. I'm like, wow, and it'll blow my mind. So, those are the things that like we want whoever cares to listen to want. But I mean, the people that, would want to know or would listen would be probably people of our age.
Niche though. There's a niche there.
And it's just, but it's just something that,
you're doing it to get it out.
Yeah, happiness and the passion and stuff for it. It's just something, and just like what you do here. I mean, and
I would just do it's open genre, so I'm getting these shows, I'm getting science shows.
Right.
I just crave a lot.
Right.
I could go down that niche with you, and people like you every day of my life.
And you're going to come on a podcast
every day. Yeah, of course. I'd be honored. Every day of my life, I would do it. I just think that, and that's this format. To me, is the beauty of it is that it is long form conversation, and people may come in grab bits and pieces here, or put it up in the corner of their computer as they're working. And we have an audio version of the show, and I'm surprised by the downloads. My point is, we are the anti-soundbite, meaning that we are not under the premise that we're going to communicate with our audience. Thank you, like you're going to get anywhere else on commercial television, commercial radio, even commercialized podcasts now. You're not going to be talked at.
Right.
In little bits and have you guess and fill it in between. And that's what Rogan, I think he's changed the landscape by doing that, where he wasn't the only one, but he popularized it. And that's why we do this, because we want people to talk.
Agree. And I mean, the other thing too is like, I think a Stern and Rogan definitely and things are, Stern to me is one of the most masterful interviewers.
Best ever.
Period. And I mean, he pulls things from people and he puts them in an environment like this where it's just chill and comfortable and you like what you're looking at, and he gets people to talk. And I mean, that's what people are like craving.
Of course. Why? Because everything else is being thrown at us. We get our news that way. We get our entertainment news that way.
It's all edited. It's all,
homogenized, and it's sold to us.
Exactly.
Even though we're not paying something for the airways, we technically are. We're being sold. We're being sold a narrative, and see, there's no narrative here. Like I don't, I just don't care. And you have to really come to this space, and I'm talking like a millennial now, at the podcasting space with humility, and that's where I try to lead with humility. That I don't know anything, and I just want to let people do their thing and learn. Right? If you come at that with that, then everything's opened up to you.
Right?
Because I've never had anybody come in here. Your show 169, 8.
Oh, wow.
And it's only been we're not even 2 years yet. And I only wanted to do like one a week, but it's just taken off. The thing is, no one has said, I'm not talking to you. Nobody is, once you come at it with humility and really are curious to learn about what they have to say, everybody wants to be heard, right?
Right. And I had seen bits and pieces of yours before this, and then when you asked me to, I went back further.
Mm-hmm. Good.
And it's just like, that is one thing I love about what you do, is the fact that you've covered every topic, and
almost,
and you're like just open to do that, where even with I would like to do with this podcast, all I want to talk about, although I'm sure it's going to veer off in 50 directions, is good music.
There's nothing wrong with that.
And I want to focus even further on this, because I want to spread the love that never got spread, that kind of stuff. Right on.
It's a great premise.
But again, it'll probably go in 50 directions, and I'm okay with that as long as it's flowing and
it's
good.
Real.
And, yeah.
It's authentic.
Exactly.
It's not, it's not. I really honestly believe that the public in general wants commonality. They want to be able to feel and touch people that are of similar ideas and hear things that they're not exposed to normally, right? We're curious. We want to know. But we have been spoon-fed forever, man, on TV.
Yeah.
Television is wonderful, and it's also the devil. Kill your television, man.
No doubt.
It's like, I would love to have more radio. Of course, and I understand you got to pay the bills. I get all that. I don't have believe me, I have no delusions that you or anyone else should start a podcast and not consider the money component. I am fortunate in my life that I don't need it for this show, and it gives me a unique, it gives me a unique authenticity to what
freedom
I'm doing.
Too.
Well, the freedom's there, yeah. I'm not good at taking orders anyway, so if a sponsor was saying you can't do that, I probably wouldn't have them.
Right.
But yeah, very authentic nature of what we do, and I just don't want to put up with the aggravation that I would have to do to maintain sponsors and all that. Now all of a sudden it's not fun anymore.
Right.
For me.
Unless somebody threw a pile of bills and said, do what you want.
Yeah, but who's going to do that? Right?
Nobody. But,
so that's what I'm saying.
You can't say nobody. It's happened.
But I will tell you, I really have an appreciation for what you mentioned about wanting to start, because out of boredom, on my nightly walks at midnight, I found a Rush podcast after Neil had passed, and they, over 2 shows, critically broke apart these are nitnoids. Great guys, I'm guessing, but nitnoids. They broke apart every record. It was so weird and nerdy and specific, but man, I listened to every one of those episodes because I was the perfect listener, the perfect participant, right?
Right. And that would be the same way with me with, like I was saying, like with obscure bands or obscure albums. Like, I can tell you everything about these, and a huge percentage of people wouldn't care, but those that would, like you with the Rush thing,
right?
Like, because
there's
when
somebody
somebody brings it up to me, like, I go on a tangent and they're looking at me like, are you out of your mind? How do you know this, or why do you know? I'm like, just because I adore it, and I just got sucked into it, like big time. And I just, the genre, the pop metal, hard rock thing, it's looked at on a very, what's the word? You were saying about like Kiss songs, like there's not a whole bunch of depth to them, you would think.
No, right. Yeah.
But like there are,
a casual music fan would think they're not very deep.
Right off the bat. But I think of bands. Again, I'll get chuckles from people that know me, but I think of a band like Cinderella. Okay, Cinderella first album, love. They'll be the first ones to tell you the video, like a lot of corniness to it and blah blah blah.
They know what they were doing,
right? And it was designed. It was a lot of it was on purpose.
Was there a song about a train or something, or was it like a?
No, you're thinking of their third album.
Okay.
Heartbreak Station. See, that's the thing.
A long time ago, pal.
The first two albums, and this is where I'll get nerdy with the stuff I love. First two albums were pretty successful, pretty popular.
Okay.
First one was just, most people would cringe hearing Tom Keeper's voice for most of that album.
It's got a unique.
Yeah.
We're talking like mid 80s now. Are we
Yeah.
like at 86, 80 something like
Yeah,
that?
that's when the first one came out, Night Songs. And then the second one, Long Cold Winter, to me, like just a huge change, maturity, deeper songwriting, better instrumentation. He changed his singing in areas. And then you jump to the third album, which is, it was hitting right around where everything was about to go off the cliff.
Right.
One of their best albums, like
90.
incredible album. They went more into the blues side of things. Again, he changed his voice, and I think it's because he knew he couldn't keep up what he was doing forever.
Yeah.
And it was for the better. The songwriting was better. I mean, and like when time started changing, people went away from them, only knew them for those first two albums, didn't realize they released 5 after that were pretty damn incredible.
Right.
And
so they're a great candidate for your show concept then.
What's that?
They're a great candidate for your show concept.
Yeah, and I mean, it's just that, there's, again, in general, and it's not just that genre, there's so much good music that nobody's ever heard. And
that's a good premise for a show.
I want to touch on that.
I think that's how did you come about that idea?
Just again, it's probably been like me and my roommate from college bantering back and forth about it for decades.
Okay.
And at some point in the last few years, our in general, even within the band, our lifestyles have changed. The pandemic hit and stuff like that. And I'm like,
no doubt.
I want to take more time to talk about and do things I enjoy, and this is one of them.
Yeah.
And that's the thing. I want it to be about just good music in general. Again, some people might not consider Cinderella good music. I don't really care. But I can pull out things from Cinderella to show you that, not necessarily that you're wrong, but there are good aspects of it that you missed.
Yeah, well, I'm sure. I think most fans, even fans of legacy bands, would dismiss albums. I mean, I can tell you Rush albums I never gave a really healthy listen to, like Vapor Trails and things, which people love that record.
Right.
That was all new Rush. I mean, Rush has got so many stages.
Right.
That's a stage.
That is one thing I know about them. That they
got so many different stages of music where and everybody loves to do. I mean, that's the thing about classic rock. It's people want to hear the hits, right? They want to hear what they remember as a kid, and like you said, there's probably so much good work as they're refined as individuals and musicians now, right?
Right, and that's those are some of those songs are some of the ones I don't want to hear live, but that they have to do them because the majority wants to be nostalgic and go back to that time and relive that feeling and stuff. And I kind of do to some degree, but like we always joke, we do in Nomad, in the country band, we do a lot of rock stuff because that's where we all came from. So
play some Skinner, dude.
Well, yeah. Unfortunately, yeah. But like we do You Give Love a Bad Name and Living on a Prayer. 2 songs I never want to hear again.
Yeah, they'll go over well in Pittsburgh though.
Yeah, but I adored them and I overplayed them myself.
Of course.
But I can't listen to them anymore. And like doing them doesn't give me.
That is great.
Yeah, doing them doesn't give me that feeling anymore. It's just they've lived their time. Meanwhile, if we're talking about Bon Jovi, there's a billion tunes that if you're a fan and follow them over the years, I can't stomach.
In and Out of Love off of 7800
Great
Fahrenheit
tune.
or whatever the name of that album was.
Yep, that was it. Silent Night, one of their best ballads.
Yeah.
Those early stuff, the first album is a lot of good stuff. He wrote pretty much all that himself. But
when's the first time you saw that band live?
86 or 7 on Slippery When Wet.
Okay, so the year before they opened for Rat.
Yeah, I did. I saw them when they were headlining for the first time.
And the next year they were back open as a headliner, but they opened for Rat that year, and I saw John jumped over the drum riser, and they were the opening act.
Wow.
So Rat shoved them all the way to the front of the stage in front of the black tarps.
They were working on small space.
But he jumped over the drum riser in these high heel feminine style cowboy boots with this long denim trench coat, and I was just like, number one, he's gonna break his freaking leg. Number two, who is this guy?
Yeah.
Number two, and when that set was done, they destroyed Rat that night. Rat was so disappointing compared to what Bon Jovi did. It was unbelievable.
And I'm a probably moderate Rat fan, but that explains where Bon Jovi went and where Rat went. And there's a lot of good tunes and things, and Warren DeMartini and all that stuff in
Love
Rat.
him.
But that says a lot. And I mean, I saw the first one I saw. Again, Slippery When Wet headlining in Pittsburgh is when John's voice was gone because they had already toured. It was
last show of the
god-awful.
tour.
I don't know if it was or not. But it was late into it. They had already toured the world with it, and they may have been to Pittsburgh once already, and I saw them on their second time through. And he was terrible, and then they came back. It was either another time for Slippery When Wet or New Jersey, and like he said, I'm here to make up for it, and he crushed. At that point, I think he had gotten vocal lessons and gotten things back in place, and they killed. So
they brought him back again on that. That's some band manager just milking that thing.
Oh, that was Doc McGee. He killed them.
Oh, there you go.
Exactly. I mean, you know that from Kiss and stuff. Yeah.
Yes, I do.
He murdered a lot of them, but they were making so much money that how could you pass it up?
He's like a little logistical. They call him the logistical nightmare. I just want to say that, but he just loves to. He would find a way to jam as many shows as humanly possible.
Yeah.
With some of the older bands, you can't anymore. Physically, you can't. But
I mean, John. I was gonna say that before. Like, I hate to say it, but like, Bon Jovi in the last couple albums and last 5 or more years. I mean, his voice.
Yeah, well, of course they all age.
But I mean,
Stanley doesn't sound like Stanley.
No,
just sound. I mean, it's
that's a bummer too, because you were asking about favorite vocalist. He would have been close to next in line behind Freddie.
And what's crazy about that? Do you agree with this statement? To me, he's my favorite vocalist only because of the era of when I grew up and what it's meant to my career and how closely intertwined I am with that beat. So he becomes my favorite vocalist. But he's not the best vocalist in my era. You know what I'm trying to say? That? And that's not to criticize him. It's just saying I realize that's not the greatest vocalist in that era, but it's my favorite.
Yeah.
You see what I mean?
I 100% see what you mean. But like he's, to me, I don't know if you would have seen that on his birthday, I posted his solo album cover and said,
love it.
What he did for me, and but to me, he was the embodiment in every way of a true rock star. Look,
no doubt.
His voice, his stage presence,
man.
everything.
There's no question.
But his voice,
no question.
His voice, until probably the last 10, 15 years.
I think in 2009, 10 it started to. I mean, there were breaks and cracks.
Yeah, and I mean, but
it was hard to watch as a fan.
But he held up to me a lot longer than I would expected him to, staying in the high range that he did through the 90s.
It's unbelievable. I mean, I started working with him in 2006, so first thing I did was Live the Wind tour, that solo thing he did.
Yep.
And that we started making guitars at that time for him. But that show in 2006 was the best Kiss show I ever saw because he was with a really amazing band.
Yep.
But there was nothing about his voice in 2006 that was even remotely troubled in any way.
Yeah.
It was amazing.
Yeah, and I think you do hit a point or an age where things change, your vocal cords harden.
He's
all kind of stuff
adapted
happens.
pretty well, though.
I agree.
Yeah, and like he always would say, if you're expecting to hear me, how I sounded in '77, then go put a record.
Exactly. And I was telling you about my favorite singer, Tony Harnell from TNT, another one. He's the same way. He's like, if you want to hear me sing that high, go back to '86 and listen to Tell No Tales or whatever. But it's the same way. And but they've adapted and adjusted and sing in different keys and change the melody, all kind of stuff. Paul, there was a period of time with Paul I heard I just couldn't watch, and I'm like, why is he doing this?
Yeah.
I knew the answer, but I didn't want to.
Yeah, there are some. Well, a lot of people for this reunion tour, they were wondering how the last tour was tough. It's tough for me, and I try to reserve judgment because I know how difficult to put that show on it is.
Yeah.
But nobody
gets a vocalist over the course of a long tour and then over the course of their lives about what that puts on their vocal cords.
Oh, yeah, because that's a human instrument as opposed to like a guitar. You could play one guitar for 50 years, and that son of a bitch will probably even sound better in year 50.
Yeah, and on
right?
top, yeah, but I used to have this argument with my guitarist in the band about like days where I was hurting, and I'm like, let's not do that tune. I'll butcher it, blah blah blah. I'm like, what are you talking about? You'll be fine. And we would get into it a little bit, and I'll be like, you see your guitar there? I go, you can change strings on that guitar and it's going to sound perfectly fine. I can't change vocal cords, All I can do is try to prepare, try to warm up, try to sing more often, this and that, and hopefully not overplay or play too much or I'm going to kill myself.
Yeah.
So, and that's
it's tough.
That's the difference, And for whatever better or worse, you get through it and you deal with it. I've only had in the 15 years of Nomad, I had to cancel, I want to say 2 shows.
That's it.
2 shows. Now, the one we were like doing an Atlantic City, Maryland, another beach thing, 3 days or 3 shows over 4 days, and I started to lose it on the first show.
Okay.
And I made it through that show. You would have never known listening as an audience member. We got to the second one, and I had a day off, which was probably a bad thing, because everything kind of locked up.
Yeah.
And I was eking out notes during this second show, and I'm like, dudes, there's no way I'm doing this third show and of any quality. And we knew a guy that my fiddler was in a previous band with, and this guy drove down to the next show in deep West Virginia and fucking killed.
Really?
And got me out of
How about that?
Dying on that show. So that was the one time, and then another time I think I just completely lost it leading up to a show, and I had to cancel. I was sick. And
what's an instrument, right?
Yep. I mean, there are things beyond your control. There are just things beyond your control. And again, luckily, I think I've had enough singing in general, vocal lessons, not a lot, but enough over the years, and just knowing what feels right where I'm not straining, that I've been able to maintain it. I'm not what I was 10 years ago, probably, you know, like in terms of wanting to do like hit things or just pull off things that I would have tried in the past, but
right.
I know where I am with that, and I'm fine with that.
What's your thoughts on us returning to live music here? Like, what's your thoughts with the bands?
We haven't even touched pandemic yet.
Yeah, we would. Do you have a timetable in your head? Do you have a guess?
No, and I mean, let's see, a guess. I think early next year.
Really?
Yeah. Just the reality, because although it may come back before the end of this year, I don't think like huge concerts are going to come back, and I think that's a mix of the health and the risk, and also, I mean, of people like me, I picture myself. I don't think we had this conversation, but so in 2020, I turned 50 in 2020. My wife bought me 2 incredible concerts for 2020. One was, and people might not think this is incredible, but it was Kansas, Europe, and Foreigner. Foreigner was headlining.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm a big Europe fan. People will chuckle at that.
What's wrong with that?
Again, they've been together forever. They got back together, released great albums. But she got me a meet and greet and all this other stuff. And I'm like, this is kick-ass. They never come to America anymore, blah, blah, blah. That got canceled.
Of course.
That was at Star Lake.
Okay.
I'm going to call it. What is it officially again back to?
I don't recognize anything
The
else.
Amphitheater at Star Lake is its new name.
Okay. It's Star Lake to me.
So we were front row at that, and then we were doing the Motley tour.
Yeah.
Fairly good seats for that. But I imagine myself crammed in front row at that show now, and I don't feel too comfortable. I don't care if I'm right or wrong, or if I'm a puss, whatever.
I get it.
And I just think, like, it sucks that that's like what's implanted in my head, and probably a lot of other people's heads.
Of course.
And they're the opposite too. They're like, I'd rather be at a concert than care about getting sick or spreading it to somebody, that kind of stuff. So that's why I think, if anything, it's going to come back gradually. Even if Motley Crue decides to come back this year on that tour, I think they're going to be disappointed, because I think the crowd is going to be hesitant still, because some people aren't going to be vaccinated, blah, blah, blah.
It's such a complex question.
It is.
I mean, when you sit and think about, because you nailed it. It isn't just about getting the official go-ahead from the government. It's the innate fears that will linger for a long time with the populace
It's the
and what
mindset.
we're going to be willing to do.
Yep. I mean, think of road crews. Is the entire road crew going to be on board? Like, you think of the teachers, the position they're in now and
Right,
stuff.
right.
It all sucks. I mean, it totally sucks. I mean, from what, like, just from a personal standpoint, and what I went through leading up to the pandemic happening, with my wife dealing with some stuff, and I told you about losing our dog to cancer and stuff. He was our kid.
Right.
To me, that was a silver lining. I needed that time.
Yeah.
If we would have continued on playing at a steady basis, I think I would have been a wreck, and I would have sucked more than anything, and been detached and not there. And I'm still not in the best mindset, to be honest, on a couple
Oh,
levels.
sure. Oh, sure.
But just in
Natural.
general, I already see, like, I think I heard it right after the Super Bowl, but like The Weeknd, for example, just rescheduled his entire tour this year for next year. And I'm not a big Weeknd fan, but that, to me, that says a lot. He's huge.
Yeah.
And he realizes that he's probably better off waiting until next year.
Yeah, so it's funny you said that, because there's a lot of bands that have tours later this fall, but basically they just kind of have to do that, right? I mean, they've got to put it in just in case.
Yeah.
The way things are trending,
Yeah.
you don't see it.
Yeah, even like Motley was a good example of last year. They held off canceling until the absolute last possible minute, because they thought there might be a glimmer of hope, and then they canceled. But yeah, I think the same thing. And I mean, I think there'll be bands that they've already, rescheduled their tour from last year to this year, and they're going to stick it out, hoping that there might be a clearing in the woods. But I think there are some people that are just like, we're waiting.
Has anyone seen Vince Neil through the pandemic?
No. There were...
I saw the fake photos online of him
Okay,
being
I was
all
going to
buff.
say, I was going to say the funny ones, but I did see a picture or two of him. I mean, he's notorious for doing that, though. Even in previous years, like leading up to the Feel Good tour, he was not in great shape and this and that, and he like dove into it, lost all kind of weight, got his tan back and everything else, and they killed on that tour. I'm not gonna lie.
Did you see how big he got?
Oh, dude, I've seen him live. I've seen him live recently, and
there's
it's
some pretty horror.
embarrassing.
Yeah, so people talk about Paul Stanley's voice going. There's that, but then ultimately, all you got to do really is just
Right.
take a look at some of those
I
Vince
agree.
Neil live or solo shows.
I agree, and that's the other thing too. Like, he not only has he let himself go, and I mean, I guess he has the right to do whatever he wants,
course.
in that way. But when it sacrifices your show terribly, when you're skipping words, when you're not singing, when you're just singing flatline notes and things like that, and you don't care, that's a totally different thing to me. You can look however you want. I don't necessarily am going to be happy seeing that Vince Neil, but if you're killing it, I don't care.
Yeah, I get that.
I really don't.
No, I get that. What's big Van Halen fan growing up?
Yeah. I came a little bit late to the game, but once I was there, I was hooked.
So I am amazed that the David Lee Roth, who gets a pass, because I'm looking around and people are getting into it. I'm like, he's talking his way through this. It's the only way I can describe it.
Yep.
He's talking his way through the songs. He's not singing.
Yep.
And it seems like no one cared. Like, this has been going on the last couple of years.
And to me,
right?
You're 100%
Did you see
right.
it the same way?
Yep. And I mean, and to me, that goes back to 100% nostalgia. They lived for the time that he was part of Van Halen.
Yeah, of course.
And there's a good reason for that, without a doubt. But they're just happy to see the original foursome back together and touring. That's what they were. And yeah, I mean, I could not watch it. I'm like going, what is like how?
Well, the bass player wasn't there, right? Anthony wasn't there, was he?
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
That's true.
They saw Eddie and David together.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think it was the fact that Dave was just back in the band. He was the front man again, even though, Sammy...
Oh, what's he? Oh, Sammy still got the pipes.
And he
It's
crushed.
unbelievable.
Yeah, he crushed.
He has a fountain of youth, too. I don't know what's going on with him.
He
but
does.
He can't be the age that
I
say. There's just no way.
I just said the same thing about Rick Springfield the other day.
Yeah.
I posted about him. He's 72. I saw him 4 years ago, and we'll come back to Van Halen for sure. But I saw him 4 years ago doing an acoustic tour with Richard Marx.
Mm-hmm.
My wife and I ran into him in the restaurant earlier in the day, hung out with him, really nice guy. He comes out, does his acoustic show, and at the time he was 68. This was at the which theater?
The Palace?
No, this is one of the theaters in the theater district.
Oh, okay.
Okay. What's the biggest one?
The Rex?
No, you're thinking Rock Theater. I'm talking theaters.
Oh, you mean like the Benedum?
Yes, they were at the Benedum.
Okay.
This dude runs into the audience. I forget what tune he was doing, and he's running across the arms of the theater seats. I'm like, this dude is going to fall and kill himself in like multiple ways. And he kicked ass the whole time. And he was just on like Good Morning America a week or so ago because it's the 40th anniversary of Jesse's Girl. 40th anniversary.
Wrap your head around that.
So he performs it acoustically on the show, crushes it, and they're talking to him, and they're like, there's no way that you're going to be 72 years old this year. He's like, yeah, I'd like to think that too, but I am. And he still looks like a rock star to me. So, going back to Sammy and stuff, I mean, yeah, Sammy, he does, and I said about Rick, I'm like, I want to know what this dude is eating and drinking, and I want that.
It's amazing. And it's funny because people are making this big thing about Tom Brady being 43 and 44 playing that well, and it's pretty remarkable, but I mean, he's only 44.
Right, exactly. And I mean,
this guy's 72.
Right. And it's not like Tom really hasn't taken a beating in his career either. That's the other thing. He's been protected and stuff. Yeah. And I agree. I mean, like when I was 42 and 43, I still felt like I was 18, whatever.
Yeah, I still feel like I'm in my 30s now.
Me
at 55.
too.
You get reminded all the time that you're not.
Right.
Right. Every once in a while, something aches. It probably doesn't.
Agreed.
Van Halen was something. That was a force. Were they on your radar as a kid, or they were always out there like they were badass, and you just accepted they're badass, although you might not listen to them that much?
Well, it was similar to the Prince thing. Like, again, I was consumed with Kiss in 78 when the first Van Halen album came out, so I kind of missed the first, probably, I hate to say this, like 3 albums. And 1984 is what smacked me in the face.
For most people, I think.
I do too. That's when they really hit mainstream. And then I went back, and I'm like, this is crazy. And it was more, again, I love Dave. Dave was the ultimate.
Dave is Dave.
Yeah, he was the ultimate frontman in every way. But it was more like, it was just the sound and Eddie, and I mean, it was just.
It was together. It was Eddie and Dave, I think.
The unit.
It was those two primarily. It was those guitar riffs with that reverb drenched singing, right?
Yep.
I mean, that's when I think of David Lee Roth, classic David Lee Roth. It's really very heavy reverb, like he's singing in an echo chamber, and there's a lot of reverb on the guitar licks.
Yep.
But that's what it was.
Yep.
And it was something we'd really never heard before.
Yep. And then, I mean, Dave going into his solo stuff, there's a lot of great stuff in his solo stuff.
Yeah, he surrounded himself with great guys, great players.
Especially early on, too. But I mean,
Vi, Becker.
And my buddy Ray was his drummer for 8 years in the 90s.
That's right.
And again, they released music that a lot of people never heard of. It's really good stuff. And he was still singing half decently at that point.
Yeah. Was Ray the drummer on, what's the album he did, Sensible Shoes? Little Ain't Enough?
No.
Right after that, maybe.
Yeah, I think the next album, what was the next album after that one? That was Skyscraper. Am I right?
No. Well, I don't know. Skyscraper was a late 80s or early 90s. Because I think A Little Ain't Enough came in 91 or 92, I think.
I think you're right.
I think.
So there's
that's when Becker was on that album.
Right. I'm trying to think of the first album Ray was on, and it was in the early 90s.
It might have been either that album or the album after, maybe.
I think it was the album after. So, but he was,
David's a great showman. I mean, I love watching him on stage. He's a great interview. If you haven't seen him on Rogan from a year or two ago, you gotta go watch.
I'm glad you said that. I will.
He's a little hard to really sit and watch,
right?
Because it's either I can tolerate it. Some people I know can't.
And I mean, his mind is just a constant stream of
consciousness, man. That's
everything.
How he talks. And they say that's how Kanye West was on Rogan too. And I didn't get much out of that, but I watched it. But there's this similar stream of consciousness in the way they talk. Although David Lee Roth seems like it doesn't make sense, but he seems really freaking uber intelligent. Like he's really crafted in his thoughts.
I agree.
And I don't know where that's coming from.
Right. I think Ray would tell you that too. Ray's told me he told me stories over the years about
manic depressive, bipolar, right?
Yeah, like all over the place. And I mean, to the fans, just, I won't tell a story because I don't know if I would offend anybody, but
I understand.
He was just a total tool at one point to one of Ray's relatives who was a diehard fan.
Okay.
But then he, he'd tell me the opposite story where he went out of his way to do something for somebody. So, it was...
Yeah. And Freddie Qualo, my sidekick here, he didn't tour with them. That's why I know he knows Ray.
I betcha.
Those two... we're going to get you two guys in the room here on this next show. I want you back here
I'd love to.
in kind of quick order if we can make that happen.
Okay, cool.
But because he would love to have been here today, and I'm gonna save the road story because Fred was on the movie with you, and you guys just didn't even know it, which is just nuts.
I mean, my thing was small and
so was his,
and pretty quick, but it was it was a bucket list thing that I didn't even know was a bucket list thing at the time.
Amazing, that's amazing.
And my friend Candace Orlandi, she's
I know Candace.
You know Candace? Oh, from Froggy too. Yeah. She's in the film industry now with makeup and hair and all that stuff.
Right on.
She's the one that she texted or emailed me. This is in 2008.
Wow.
And
How about that, huh?
It's crazy. And she's like, dude, the road is looking for a skinny amputee, which we didn't even talk about. But I'm like, okay. I said, I've never even thought about anything close to film or acting or anything like that. I mean, it was, like I said, a one-line silly thing. But I went and auditioned among like 3 or 4 other dudes. And they picked me and made me even look skinnier and unhealthier with makeup, and
of course
that's
depressing movie. The such a depressing movie.
And the thing that sucked for me about it the most is there was like Oscar talk and all this stuff, and then I saw the end result, and I'm like, I don't think people are going to get this or appreciate it or anything. And even even the part of the victims in it was just strange. And I mean, it was awkward and things.
Yeah.
But if you look at the credits, I'm man on mattress. And I'm this dude who just got his leg freshly cut off.
Oh, man.
There's a blood stain on the mattress.
Oh, man.
And I like Vigo and somebody that's, I don't know if it's the boy or somebody else, come through the door, and they're stunned to see all these people in here. And I have to say, help us, please help us. And I honest to God even think that's an overdub. Like they did something after the fact. But it was fun.
That movie was, it was supposed to initially be that
dark.
Yeah, I mean it's the book is dark.
Right. I do think it was I think it like they wanted to portray it as close to the book as they can and as dark as they could. It just like, the end was supposed to have like this hopefulness to it, but I really didn't get that. And I think a lot of other people did not get that either, so.
You open to coming back in a couple weeks?
Dude, I'd love to.
Yeah, I'm going to get Freddie on here too. And you two are going to be kindred spirits for sure. I was trying to get him in today, but not that he's that busy. But yeah, Fred's got a unique rock and roll drenched background.
Yeah, and
you familiar with the movie Rockstar?
Yes.
So Fred's in that movie with Nick Catanese and Zach Wilde.
Okay.
And so if you go back and watch that movie, Fred's, I don't know what his roles are, but he's waving the flag at the car race. And he's
trying to remember.
He's in there quite a bit, but there's some good stories about that era of filming that.
I would love to hear that. I'll tell you real quick about that movie.
Yeah.
That movie to me compares to, and I mean, there's a reason because of the way the movie goes, compares to the changeover, obviously, from what I consider good music to crap in the early 90s, and that's what it's meant to be. But going into it, I didn't know that's what it was about or where it was going. So I'm into the movie and seeing the struggle and all that stuff. And then everything takes a left turn and he friggin' moves to Seattle and cuts his hair and everything falls apart. I was depressed at the end of that movie.
So supposedly, and I'll let Freddie get into the details when we get him in here, but supposedly, David, there was an alternate or 2 alternatings filmed.
I do remember hearing that.
And so... and here's a little aside, and if I'm saying this wrong, then I stand corrected. As the story as I know it, Black Label Society, Zach Wilde's band, was their image was actually formed while Zach was filming that movie, because one of the endings for Wahlberg in that movie was that he had moved to the mountains and became a hermit. So Zach was up there, and they were filming that scene, and there was a fake beard there. And I guess Zach Wilde put this fake beard on and was kind of like had a few beers and was having a good time with it. And supposedly that somehow metamorphosed into what happened there, with BLS
interesting.
or whatever. But it's a great, and I think you'll really appreciate it, because I think not only will you and Freddie be able to really have a great show together, but I think that there's interconnections between the two of you and who you know. And
I agree.
Because when it comes to, especially Pittsburgh rock and roll, he's also been a stagehand in Pittsburgh when he's not touring. So he's always at every event in town, either working or there as a VIP or something. So
and even in the country genre, over the years playing like the regatta and things like that, we continually ran into people that we were all friends with back in the day too.
Yeah.
We're like, we didn't know you were still involved.
He'll probably walk in and go, "Hey, I know you."
Probably.
I mean, that's probably what's going to happen. But I want to have both of you on in short order here, and we'll continue the conversation at that time. Sound
great,
good?
man. Yep.
We have a lot on you we haven't touched yet, but we'll do that with Fred.
Thank you so much.
All right,
for
hey,
having me.
dude, thank you so much for doing it. This means a lot to me. And you came on, and
It was a fun time.
And and you accepted the invitation. So I
knew we
appreciate
were
it.
going to be kindred spirits in the music talk.
All right, wait, and show number 2 is gonna be even better.
Cool, man.
All right,
Thank you.
All right, friends, we are out.
Hello, you're listening to the Eric McKenna Project.